All right, everybody, we are back for another Ozone late night, even though it is not late nor night. That's okay. That's the title of the show. I have to stick with it at this point. I've been going on this too long. And I am joined for this episode by Paul Thurrott, who is a technology journalist, blogger, and author. Prolific author, because I saw the term about 30 books, and I figured I'll just put in prolific, and that makes it easy. And You can see Paul every week over on the Twit Network, whether it's on Windows Weekly, and I believe you do Hands on Windows. Those are the two main ones.
That's right.
And then any other podcasts besides those?
Well, I do First Ring Daily in the morning with Brad Sams. Short. This is usually 10 minutes-ish. And is there anything else? I guess that's it.
Well, if there is anything else, you can find out about it by going over to Thurrott.com. That, kids, is called a segue and a plug all in one. That's how it's done, which I rarely do correctly. Well, Paul, thank you for doing this. Welcome to Ozone Late Night. How are you on this fine Tuesday?
Pretty good. We're between busyness this week, so it's just been kind of a busy month or so, but good. Everything's good.
Every month seems like a busy month now. It's just, is there ever a stop with the flood of everything happening at this point? I
know. We used to have quiet times of the year, and I feel like we've lost that.
Yeah. Well, and plus with just, what is it? Every week there's 18,000 new AI stories. So even if there was nothing else, I
literally almost said, thanks, AI.
Yeah. Well, let's, speaking of AI, because how can you not anymore? Because you have to, even if you really don't want to. I wanted to talk about something because one of my, wait, sorry. No, where am I going? No, I have to do, there is one thing I actually do correctly every show. That's right. What am I doing? Let's start with people who may not know who you are and your background. So you've been in technology journalism for a long time. And one thing that's always interesting to me with anybody, because there's like a 50-50 split when I talk to people about where they are in their career today, as opposed to where they started. And half of them, that's what they wanted to do. Half they didn't. So which was it? How did you get started in this? Let's start there.
Oh boy. How much do we have? 2 hours? All right. So, no, as a kid, I was an artist, which maybe you can appreciate. This is how I know Joe from his incredible Photoshop skills. But I was, I went up through high school and I was, winning awards. I did go to art school. This was always the path, And then when I got to art school, I realized this was, for me, not going to be fulfilling or a way to have a good career. It just, graphic artist, it just didn't seem to make sense. But the world was transitioning into computers, I think would be the way to say it. And the school I was going to at the time just was not making that transition. It seemed like they were behind. And pretty quickly into this, I said, I need to do something different. And I took a year off. I went into banking meaning I was a teller. Not like a bank, like an investment banker, but it occurred to me that maybe the right thing to do would be become a programmer. I was always into technology and had some of the earliest home computers and all that kind of stuff. It was always a big thing for me. And it was, maybe this is a way to turn a hobby into a career. And so I went to school for that. And a couple of years in, I met a professor who was writing a book who asked me to help. And a lot of time went by and my career just went in a completely different direction. There were a couple of times there I could have kind of fulfilled the programmer thing and done that with my life. And if I could have chosen anything more frustrating than what I do right now, that would have been it. But I became a writer. First of books, and then I joined what was then Windows NT magazine in the late 90s, had the super site for Windows and WinInfo on my own, which that company bought and brought me in-house. And I was there until they were sold, and the parent company, which was ginormous, megacorp.com, just basically split everything up, ended up laying off everybody except for me and one other guy. And I said, that's it, I'm out, and I went sort of private. I was with BWW Media for several years, George, and I started Thurrott.com and as a continuation of the old stuff. And then eventually, I almost said I bought myself out. No money traded hands, but George was gracious enough, because we had talked about it early on, that there would be some point where I would transition and be truly independent. And then we did that, and it was, it's been great. So I've been lucky, I guess, in that sense.
That's interesting. You say you went for art and then realized it couldn't be a career, because that's basically what I found out when I went into school. And I remember one of the I think it was my senior year, because mine was an illustration program, and the head of the program said, just so you know, none of you are going to make money at this. Okay, let's get started. It's like, wow.
Yeah, that's quite an intro.
So, I mean, it was a brutal honesty. I appreciated the fact that he wasn't covering up that.
Right.
Because he was kind of a different guy. Very quickly, you figured out he was kind of on his own wavelength, which, well, big shock in art school. But that was something where I went, oh, okay. And it became clear, too. I just realized I was looking around at the people in the class with me, and some of them were so much better. And I'm sitting here going, if these are the people I have to compete against, I'm not that good. I'm not that good a painter or anything like that, so I better have a backup plan. And it was an accidental thing. But the backup plan is I happen to understand computers. So I ended up going into basically IT help desk type stuff, and that's where it's been, is I've kind of, but weirdly, every job I've ever had, all the way through up until today, the thing that I get hired for, which is IT stuff, ends up being the smaller portion of what I do because they realize I'm creative. So they start saying, oh, can you do this? And it's like, there's an irony. I came out of a school that told me there was no career for creativity, went into what up until and for a little while probably still is a secure field, only to find that nobody wants those skills. They want the creative skills because they don't have anybody who does that stuff. Boy, this world makes a lot of sense, don't it? It's just...
Well, it's funny because that doesn't seem to make sense. But if you've been around long enough, as I think we have, you've seen this kind of dynamic a bunch of times. There is an interesting crossover. People who are into technology, people who are programmers or otherwise involved in the industry are often musicians or artists. And there's something to it, even though they don't seem like they're related in any way. And it's like you. I mean, it's helped me as well. When I was doing the superset, I would make my little graphics, and I was good at that kind of thing, so I could do that. And I'm not as proficient at, say, Photoshop as you are, or whatever. But I actually use a lot of AI for some of the images I use on the site. But I do have that background, and so it comes up. It helps with the writing, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, do you miss it? Do you miss doing that stuff, or do you? It sounds like you do. You just kind of pepper it in here and there, and you still kind of keep in touch with it.
Yeah, there's a big trend right now where, especially younger kids, but I think a lot of generations are starting to embrace kind of what I think of as old-fashioned technologies. Like kids are embracing like CDs or cassette tapes, maybe, or vinyl. iPods are becoming a big thing again with certain people. But even as a young guy, I remember being, taking art classes in high school, and I always wanted to be able to refine an image. But if it's pen or pencil or whatever on paper, you erase, and eventually you're erasing through the paper, and you can destroy it. And so it was very early on. It was very compelling to me to be able to do this digitally, whatever this might be, whether it was, static images or animation or video work, whatever it might be. I mean, the ability to undo and go back and fix things in a kind of an infinite way was, even as a kid, I thought was fantastic. So I don't want to, I don't really think about creating. Mostly it would be drawings in my case, or paintings, I suppose, but on traditional media, I focus it on digital, I guess.
Yeah. When the Apple Pencil came out, that was really kind of the point where I went almost, and although I say that, but I've gone back to painting now, which I always sucked at, but it's really Bob Ross painting. It's not real. I don't consider what I do real painting. I'm following that.
Do not you dare diss Bob Ross. But
yeah, I mean,
you know what though? But that's okay. I mean, I have a couple of good friends who are graphic artists, and they do a combination of digital and kind of traditional media, I guess. But I understand it. My daughter is into this. She has like, she likes quirky little things. Like she'll buy like a tiny paint set and like a tiny little canvas, and she's kind of painting on it. It's, I mean, I get it. It's just not. I just haven't gone there yet, I guess.
Well, I think it's different for us too, though, because we have distinct memories before there was so much computing everything. I think because when I actually finished my degree 20 years after I started, because I'm not much of a procrastinator, am I? But I remember I was far older than everybody else in the class. And the teacher said, "Oh, you're probably one of the last generations who remembers the pre-persistent internet where." Dial-up was, I remember when dial-up started, when you were on 14.4 was the first, or I think it might have been a lower modem.
If you were lucky, I started at 300 baht. But
yeah, I was going to say, I think by the time
by the 90s, yes.
Yeah, when we got a computer, that was, I think the fastest thing was and I know it stepped up as it went along, but I think that might be part of it is we remember that, oh yeah, the computing thing is a miracle. Like being able to do all this stuff. An iPad is, it's so unbelievable that I can draw on an iPad and print out a 24 by 36 poster of it compared to, like you said, that was the thing is you screw up on something large that you've been working on for weeks, it's gone. That's it. And now, like my sister, who's 8 years younger than me, she never knew a world where there wasn't always internet. And so she's like that, where she's kind of become sick of, like, she doesn't want her kids on the computers more than a little bit. She wants them to get out and do actual painting and running around and a lot of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's because you don't know a world where this wasn't everywhere. So I get it. You want something different because you're bored of it almost. I think. I don't know, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to every one of these advances. I mean, hopefully the goal with technology is that for it to be primarily a pro, not a con, I guess. And I like I said, I understand people embracing this older stuff. As I get older, I see myself, if you ever watch, I always talk about this action movies. It's always like a middle-aged white guy, a 70s car with a carburetor, living in a cabin in the woods by himself, no internet connection, flip phone. And I could never live like that, but I'm still like, oh man, I get it. The ability to fix anything yourself, be self-sufficient, not being spied on all the time, whatever. Like I see it, I do.
Yeah, that was my dad, who was not. I'm the only one in my family that's really artistic, so I'm the weirdo of the family, which shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. But my father was. I mean, he rebuilt transmissions, but not from using a manual. He came over from Italy when he was very young. They had no money. So he started working very young and smoking way too young, which is what ultimately got him, was smoking. So don't smoke, everybody. It's just not good for you. Please don't smoke. But he could take apart a transmission, figure out what's wrong with it, put it back together, and there was no computer or plugging into this and all this stuff. And that was one of the things that I remember him complaining about was all these computers now, you're going to need a laptop to be able to fix them. So nobody's going to own anything anymore because eventually, and we've seen this happening, it's going to be where, because my wife works for her father's automotive shop, and there's certain cars where people bring them in and she's like, we can't work on it.
Yeah,
we just
exactly.
Can't.
I was going to say,
they won't let us.
It's not enough to have a computer. I mean, in many cases, the manufacturer locks you out. They want you to have to come to them to get the car service, that you pay the money, et cetera. I mean, that's the dark side of it, I guess, but I still don't want to stand in front of a car and crank it up,
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to go back to where a crank could whip back and break your jaw off. That's not great either. You have to hit a middle ground of, okay, the utility without losing any of the ownership of it. And I think that might be part of it too, is again, really young kids are growing up in you have to subscribe to everything world. You want to listen to music? Pay a subscription. You want to do anything? Pay a subscription. Whereas CD player, hit play. Right. No subscription. Well, you buy it once, So
this is a great example of what I was saying with pros and cons. And this is something I'm wrestling with right now, which I do, I think, periodically, right? It's something that keeps coming up again and again. But as prices keep going up on subscriptions, we have more and more of them. You kind of forget you're paying for half of these things, which I think is a big part of the business model. You do have to take it on kind of a case by case basis. I had written something about, I was paying for 3 different music services through a variety of subscriptions, right? Not because I wanted to use 3 or needed to use 3, but because my daughter and son were on Spotify, and we have this Apple One thing that 3 of us use because we have iPhones. And then I probably watch YouTube more than anything. So I have YouTube Premium that gives me YouTube Music. And it's like, okay, well, I need to get rid of some of this, right? And you kind of go through it like, what makes the most sense here? And I think you can misunderstand that. I'm not going to go back to a world where I have a stack of CDs over in the corner. I'm a big reader. I've had, you could fill every wall of this room with bookshelves, and they were full of books. I carted those things back and forth across the country a couple of times. And now I have a little Kindle or an iPad that can hold every single one of those books electronically in something that almost fits in my pocket, but certainly I can carry easily with me. Not going to start a fire, not going to feed a fire, whatever it might be. I mean, you kind of go back and forth on it. If there's a happy medium or a balance, or however you want to describe that, I'd love to find it, but I think it differs by person, by whatever the topic is. We're talking about books, music, videos, whatever. But and then we have the big tech and shitification stuff, which is awesome. It's just awesome.
Yeah,
adding to
I
the
mean,
problem.
that's so. You were mentioning on, and I don't remember what the episode number, the latest Windows Weekly as of our recording, which this will be out a couple weeks after, but you had talked about how you didn't understand why when people heard, because you and I are into video games. Now I'm as like you, I'm a huge Sony fan as well as an Apple fan and an optimist. I know those are all things you are also, but no, in reality,
Yep.
yeah, no, that is a joke, and anybody who's listening to my shows knows that's a
I'm
joke.
like, I'm just going to roll with that. I'm
Yeah,
absolutely an optimist. Let's run
yeah.
with it.
Oh,
Yep.
it's all great. It's all great. But
Yep.
but you were saying you didn't understand the negative reaction people had to AI in video games, and because it's a place where it makes a lot of sense. And this, I think, is I'm in agreement, but I also understand where the reaction comes from because, and this is the enshittification problem, is it's not the tools, it's all the people in charge of them. And so the reality is they're going to tell you, all these big companies are going to say, we're going to use this stuff to empower the creators and let them make more stuff. And the reality is, and we know this because it keeps happening, what they're going to do is, what can we replace you with? And then eliminate the people who might bring something unique to the medium. And so eventually, and this already happened, this is pre-AI, in case anybody thinks this is the only reason it happened. It is not. We already had trend chasing. Everybody was making a battle royale. Everybody was making a live service. They all do this, but this is just going to expedite it because now the AI can look at something and say, all right, no, the big color is purple. Pantone issued it. This game has got traction. Make everything purple. I want you to generate all the rocks, make them all purple. And that's, I think, what people really react to. It's not just, oh, there's AI in something. It's there is an awareness at this point of what that tool will do in the hands of the people who control it. And that's, I think, the real reaction to it. Whereas I don't think any developer wants to put rocks on a planet. Who wants to do that? I mean, okay, sorry. There's one developer somewhere who has a fetish for rocks. You can do it. Go crazy, make your rock game. Nobody else wants to do it. So nobody would say, why would you do that? But it's, as soon as you hear that, the cynicism is what takes over.
But no large group of people want it. This is a task best left to automation. I think it's, Cory Doctorow, who coined the term enshittification, has a new book that just came out literally today as we record this. And so I'm starting to see interviews with him about this. And there was an excellent interview in The Guardian, which is a UK publication, which was actually very well written, which is interesting. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have a good memory, but the writer of this article, the person who interviewed him, said, the problem with AI is that the people who are telling us that this is going to change the world are the people we should trust the least to change the world. And they just don't, there's a disconnect there. And there is this growing belief that the companies that are the big AI companies, the OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, Google, whoever else, kind of understand that there's like this knee-jerk negative reaction to what they're doing. But this is almost that, there's no such thing as bad publicity kind of a thing. If you can scare people enough, it makes them feel that what you're doing is real and it makes it more important. Like when advertising in the 1960s or whatever, the ad market started talking about how we can do subliminal advertising and it will make you change your mind. It seems like a form of mind control. It makes them seem more powerful than they are. They've studied this since then, and this does not work, right? But it made them seem more important. And the AI industry is in some ways doing that right now. I feel like for people like you and I, and us normal individuals, it's become kind of tainted. I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to the term AI where we stop paying attention. And look, if you had an early experience that was bad, it was hallucinated, did something stupid or whatever, and you never looked at it again, you might be surprised. These things have improved in time, but I think a lot of people just tuned it out, and I don't know if we have to change the name or stop using the name so much or whatever it is. But no matter what you do in life, if you're a writer and if you're an artist or whatever it is that your job is, there are ways that you are probably already using AI. You might not even realize it, that will improve your workflow or save you time or money or whatever it might be. And some of those kind of use cases are going to get interesting. But for video games, I play mostly Call of Duty, which is the great cancer of that industry. It's the same game every year. I just got a gaming laptop to review, and I didn't choose any options. It's the basic install, which is the full install, 353 gigabytes. This thing takes half a day to install. It takes another half a day to render the shaders or whatever it's doing before you can even play the damn thing. And it's a mess. And every year there's a new game. Every year, if there are, I just play standard team deathmatch, whatever. I don't know. I'm just going to make up numbers because I don't know the numbers. But if there are 15 maps, I only like 3 or 4 of them. Most of those are classic maps they've remastered or redone for the new game. Every month or 2 or 3, they come up with new maps. It's the same situation over again. I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. And to the point that you made earlier, where we could use AI to analyze what people are playing in this game, what maps really resonate with people. Because you can see when people go into a match and they see the map and like, nope, they get out, or they stay in, and you can see which ones people really play. And using AI to make more maps like that. And I don't mean like, carbon copies of them, but what is it about this thing that makes it work as a map in this case, right? That would be incredibly valuable to me, because it's like trying to find something to watch on Netflix. I spend more time not playing the game in this case, or not watching movies, but looking for something to watch, or in this case, trying to waiting for a map I actually want to play. So you go into a little lobby, the map comes up, you're like, nope. You get out and you're like, all right, I'll try again. Nope. So, I mean, again, it's not perfect. I don't mean to suggest it solves all problems, but I do think it would help,
Well, and I think that's also related, is this idea that AI is this umbrella term, and that say AI doesn't mean anything. So when people say that, I'm like, well, what is that? And I was watching an interview with a developer of a game, and this has now made the rounds, so people might be familiar with it. And somebody asked him about using AI, and he started to answer, and a marketing person cut him off. And I'm sitting here going, don't cut him off. Just be honest. Do you think that looks good? Is that going to suddenly get people to go, oh, okay, I'll trust you then? Your person cut you off. Let them explain, because if they have a good explanation, people should be allowed to know. If they choose not to buy it, they would have found out anyway. And if the explanation makes sense, then maybe somebody who otherwise would have written it off as AI, would come and say, okay, that makes sense. They don't have a developer on hand that can do this thing. Rather than not make the game that everybody else on the team believes in, we'll make it using this to fill in the
3 years to make it, right? Or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And that's the problem, I think, is that it has been on the fear side and then on the promise side. This is going to do it all. Also, you won't ever have to work again. Really? How's that going to work? Who's paying me then?
Or you won't have to work because you're going to be laid off.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, people who don't understand this maybe imagine that some game developer rather is sitting there eating a bag of potato chips and watching the video while the AI makes the game and he puts his name on it and it's done. And that's not how it works. Whatever the game is, whatever the role of the individual is, you're creating assets, you're creating, in my, Call of Duty, maps and environments and weapons and loadouts and blah, blah, whatever it is. It costs millions and millions of dollars. It takes a year, for every one of these things. And, you could do it the old fashioned way, I guess, but some of that is just made better by AI. The ability to take a game that wouldn't run well on this computer, but running at a lower res and using automatic super upsizing or resolution upsizing, it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's AI. It's like, oh, you don't want to just have fun and play the game. Like, what, I don't even understand what people argue about sometimes. It's like, but for whatever reason, the video game industry is very visceral. And I think, now that I've said that sentence, it's pretty obvious why. Actually, there's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of studio closures, a lot of game cancellations. And I think they're pretty raw about it right now. And the notion that we're going to embrace AI even further will just lead to more of that. And maybe that's the problem,
And related, there's 2 things related to that. One is a lot of the layoffs they say AI are not AI. It's because they overhired from COVID because they're fools. So that's also not going to help anything, because now, again, they're just lying. And not only are they're lying about something that they're going to tell you that you should be happy about when suddenly it's splashed all over the game, even though those are not the same things at all. So people aren't as stupid as sometimes other people who are in offices think they are. And then the Jensen Huang NVIDIA thing with DLSS 5, not that I'm a big fan of Jensen Huang, because he's just Elon Musk all over again, man. When these people get rich enough, you just start to see them morph like the V people tearing the face off.
He's the ultimate right time, right place guy. But I'm curious, before you go on, what was your take? Yeah. So when you saw that, right? They showed images that were side by side, like the latest Resident Evil game, I think. Yep. What was your take on this? When you saw this,
I did not like that there were changes made to Grace's face. Now, just so everybody, has the proper setting for me. I don't even like Resident Evil games all that much. I'm not going to play it, so it doesn't matter to me. I liked the first 3, and I'll probably play Code Veronica's remaster because I like the old Romero stuff. All the modern stuff, lost on me. I didn't jump on board before. I don't care. So I have no, you're ruining my childhood. No, you're not. I don't care. No. Just so nobody thinks that, because
I'm a Star Wars fan. Don't get me started on this.
We'll talk about Outlaws, because speaking of a great game that people really crapped on, and I love it. But anyway, so when I saw that, I went, okay, that's somebody had the idea of how Grace should look, right? There was a decision made. This thing has altered it. Now, it might be a small alteration, but it did make her look sexified. And if that's not the intent of the people who made the game, and that's the fear, right? That, if I could just turn that off, then I don't care anymore. If you tell me I can turn it off and I can have the game as it was originally presented, what do I care what you put in the background? It's the same thing where all these people are like, why should there be an easy mode? I don't care about accessibility. Well, you can kiss my ass, because not everybody's good at video. Oh, no, this happens. You know this happens.
No, this is a big thing for me, actually.
Just turn off the easy. Play it hard. Who cares? I'm never going to play Dark Souls because I don't want to kill myself.
Just enjoy the story. I'm not here I don't want to solve puzzles. I don't want to fight this guy to the death, for 3 days straight. Or whatever. And that's the thing that when I saw it, my initial reaction was, why would you do that? And then my second thought was, well, if I can, I think I made a short episode where I said, as long as I can turn it off, then I don't care what you put in a video game. If it's like liquid glass, thanks, I can turn it off now because it sucks. I'm sure somebody likes it, but it ain't me, and I'm going to turn it off. So that's the part where I think people rightly get concerned is, okay, now this thing is making an alteration. It's kind of like the difference between Fallout 76 in the early days and now. My co-host and I loved the early 76 because it was this desolate, nuked out world where you just kind of experienced the atmosphere. Well, now it's full of people talking and walking around. And that's because people said it was too empty. Whereas we like the emptiness. So I'd like to be able to go back to that and wander around in there and look at a world that's ruined. I mean, that's kind of what Fallout is at certain points. So that was my reaction, but I didn't go burn down everything, stop all AI, because that's just juvenile. But I don't like if you can't. I'm still not clear on whether you can really turn that off or whether certain games are going to require it at some point. And that's the danger is, okay, it's no longer your option to experience the original artistic vision that these people put together. That's my negative side of it. Turn it off. I don't care anymore. So I'm done with it. I agree with that 100%. Just because I mentioned Star Wars, George Lucas keeps remaking his original movies, and I mostly don't have a problem with it. I mean, some of it's a little ridiculous, but the thing that bothers me is that I can't go back and see the original. I don't mind that you're doing this. I appreciate that you're an artist and this is your vision, and it's fine, but don't eliminate the old version. Even something like I experienced this with an audiobook when The Martian first came out before it was a movie. The audiobook was read by R.C. Bray, who's one of my favorite audiobook narrators. And I laughed out loud so many times listening to this, shared some of the humor with my family who was with me on a trip at the time. And then eventually they licensing something. And now it's, I already forgot the kid who played Wesley Crusher on Star Trek, The Next Generation, Will Wheaton, who's fine, by the way. He's great. Like, a lot of his audiobooks are fantastic. I'm lucky because I bought it when I did. I still get access to the original version, but that often disappears, and it bugs me that things like that happen.
That's really what it comes down to is the lack of ability to choose what you want to experience, or that it gets erased. Choice, as you said, is okay. Maybe somebody likes the original version of something that's. There's a game called Deadly Premonition, which is a janky, broken mess. I've never played it. But I've watched videos and I'm like, okay, I know why people like this. I like garbage art too. I own a Blu-ray of Street Trash, everybody. I like junk too. So I get why people like it. I tried playing it once. I'm like, nope, no way. This is too bad. But I wouldn't want it to not, if they fixed it tomorrow, I don't know that the game still works for the people who loved it, and they should be able to play it the way it was.
Yeah, now, as long as that becomes an option. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Like Fallout 1, the original Fallout. Mm-hmm. For a decade now, I've been trying to play it, and I just, every time, like, no, this time I'll put up with having to click 4,000 times to check one house. It's fine. I'll be able to have the patience. No, I won't, and I've never been able to make it past maybe 6 hours. I would love somebody to remaster that. Don't touch the graphics. but make the gameplay modernized. Let it be that I can just say, search house, and it tells me what I want, and I just choose it in one shot, not click this, then sub-click. How many, ugh.
There are examples of that. I mean, even things like the original Doom games, if you play those now, you get the choice to go between modern and legacy graphics and sound effects and music and all that. And, that's, to me, is respectful. I think the whole big tech and certification thing is partially, or maybe all, mostly about how they're forcing it on you. This is the problem in the Microsoft space. It's like, here's Copilot, you're using it to see, you want to do, no, it's coming back. Like, you can't get rid, it's a nightmare, and people just viscerally do not like that. And I understand. The NVIDIA thing, I don't know if it's going to be forced on you. I suppose, so we have the company that made Resident Evil games, whatever that one was. And they have, like you said, some artistic vision for it, and they realized it to whatever degree. And now something on the outside is coming into it, is kind of getting into the game and changing it, right? Which is it's sort of just the it literally is the next level of auto SR, right? Or auto, you improve the image somehow using AI, or at least change the image somehow using AI. Give it the look of something that is higher resolution, higher quality, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, you should be able to control that, right? So you would see this if you owned an NVIDIA graphics card, right, in a computer. Do you get to tone that down? Do you get to turn it off? I don't know.
Yeah, it's similar, and just again, everybody, it's not that I don't support big companies. I have an Adobe mug. I love Photoshop. Doesn't mean I love everything Adobe's doing, but there's a thing where they have an AI Firefly thing, which honestly I've tried it a few times. It's never what I want. That's my biggest problem. None of this stuff does what I want, and I'm too much of an anal control freak to let it do something and go close enough. No, but it does this thing where you can take an image and you can upsample it. Basically, same idea, right? You can say make it 2 times, 4 times, and what it does is I've tried it just to see what it would do, and it creates these 2 layers. And one is where you see it add the detail, and then you can turn that off and you see it just trying to recreate the pixels that exist. And the couple of times that I've used it, I always have preferred turning off the introduce new stuff thing, one thing I'll say is at least they let you turn it off. You can just have the pixels recreated and not have the generative stuff. They could have just made a new version and said, either you take the new pixels or you don't. So at least they were smart enough to do that. And I'm like, okay, I give that a pass, because at least
those
you have the option. Which one do you like
those
better?
Are 2 different things, right?
Yes.
And I'm not going to have all the language exactly, but the one where they're adding things that are not there is obviously generative AI. The rest of it is just machine learning, I guess. But
it's like content aware fill. It's just like multiplying the pixels, which are already there.
Well, we all have old scans of photographs. Maybe we don't have the photographs anymore. My dad did a bunch of this super low res. I love throwing that. We have a free tool in Windows if you have a Copilot Plus PC that will upscale them. It's wonderful, and it doesn't add anything, right? I also use pixel phones, right? And so you take a picture with a modern pixel. The best example I can remember, we were in Berlin last year in the middle of the Tiergarten, this giant monument with a gold, not an angel, but like an angel looking thing facing whatever direction. And I took a picture of it from the back and I zoomed in, maybe not 100x, but it was at least 80x. And it, processing. And because it understood the outline and what it was, it created a face, even though it was the back, so it was doing that generative AI thing. And it's like, no, like, I don't want that. Sometimes it's okay. It depends on the situation, I guess. But a lot of times.
Okay. So
what is
did
this?
It let you turn that off? Were you able to get rid of the face, or is it just part of the picture now?
Yep. No, it's part of the picture, because
that's the line that I don't like.
Yeah. So I'm not going to remember the numbers, but on a Pixel Pro, Pixel 10 Pro XL, whatever, it can go up to 100x. They don't call it digital zoom, but it's hybrid digital zoom. Whatever the optical range is probably pretty small. Actually, it's probably 8 or 10x, probably 8x at best, whatever. And then there's some range where maybe up to 30x where it doesn't do the effect I just said. But if you go over 30, because it's so far away, and you may be, you don't think you're doing it, but you're being as still as you can. But at that distance, you're doing this to it. It's going to generate imagery essentially, because it has to fill in details the sensor's not seeing, and it has to guess. And sometimes it works great. Sometimes you get a face on the back of a head. It's
Yeah,
a
well,
little weird.
as long as you could turn that stuff off, then I wouldn't have any issue with it. If it forms it as a picture,
Yeah.
and that's going to put somebody off if it makes something that's wrong. Or, and we know this about bias built into technology. If you take a picture of somebody who isn't a white guy and suddenly they look radically different because it doesn't know skin tones because it's only been trained on everybody looking the same. Somebody actually brought this example and it never even occurred to me. And I don't know that this has ever happened, but I'm like, oh, this is actually worse than any of this, is if you had somebody with like a facial deformity and it fixed it.
Oh God, yeah.
And I thought, oh man, it never even occurred to me.
Yeah,
but,
the potential to be insensitive is enormous here.
Right. And that's because it's not smart enough to know that you don't. So as long as you can turn it off, I'd be like, as long as you can turn it off, I don't care.
Yeah, we're going to call that AI, I guess, all the time now. But I mean, we had an Xbox 360. We had that Kinect sensor on top of the TV. We couldn't really get as far back as the living room didn't have much depth to it. So it wanted us to be further away, but we could make it work. But there was a black girl who lived across the street, was a friend of my daughter, and that thing could not see her. And let me tell you, that was one of the most awkward, terrible moments for a parent or whatever. I mean, and, back in that time, I mean, they kind of acknowledged the problem. I think they probably fixed it to some degree over time. I don't know. But, Microsoft at one point refused to sell AI-based person recognition software, whatever the term is, to law enforcement because it was biased against people who were not white, middle-aged white guys, like the people who made it, And I bet they don't do that anymore. I bet they just sell it to anybody. I think the company's changed a little bit there. But for a little moment there, they had some credibility, and I did appreciate that at the time, but it's getting rare.
And that's there again. This is the thing: is if people inherently trust my mother. I've told this story before, but it's hysterical and it's very true. My mother in her house has 3 Amazon devices. She has one of the old, what I call the cooling tower, one of the little orbs, and she has the cube to control her TV. Because for my mother, every remote control has too many buttons. She really just needs like 6 things, so she can just tell it to do things and it just does it. So she loves that thing. And there's times where she'll call me up because she, has trouble finding stuff on Amazon sometimes. So she'll be like, is this thing available? Can I actually buy it? Because I've told her, be careful of third-party sellers. So now she's very paranoid, which I'm very happy about. So she calls me right away and says, is this Amazon selling this so that, I don't have to worry? And I'll find it. I'll say, oh, yeah, it's fine. And she said, well, can you just order it for me? Yeah, sure, I'll order it. I'll do it. She's like, well, use my credit card. And then she starts whispering.
I've experienced this exactly.
And I said,
you're like, why are we whispering?
Your credit card is stored. We stored your card so that you could buy things on your phone. But she's like, yeah, but it's listening. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, it is, but
it is. Yet, but you've already jumped the line. Like you're past that. If you really didn't trust it, we shouldn't have your credit card in there.
I mean, if we don't trust this thing that much, don't whisper. It's going to know you're onto it. you know.
But that's a perfect example of she still distrusts these things that are in her house all over the place that she uses all the time and gets value from because it lets her use her TV easily. But she still doesn't. She distrusts Amazon so much she doesn't want to tell me the credit card that's already stored on their servers. And I'm like, you can't get over it. You can't get past that. That's
my mother's like this. My mother is the type of person who would email me and then call me to ask me if I got the email.
Sure. Oh yeah,
that kind of thing.
Trying to explain to my mother that her email wasn't only on her laptop but was also on the phone took about a year. Where she'd say, no, but I opened it on the computer. I'm like, it's fine. It's on the phone. It just doesn't have a dot anymore because it's still there. It's cloud. It's fine.
My mother is 82-ish years old, 80 somewhere in there, and maybe this is possibly 10, 15 years ago. She expressed an interest to really try to understand technology, and I just said, look, if you've gotten through this much life, and yeah, I think you're good. Just don't. It's a world of heartache, of things never working. I just don't do this to yourself.
That's how we converted my mother to a MacBook as opposed to a Windows laptop. And it's not that I'm anti-Windows. I'm not anti any of it. I have a main gear Windows PC right there. I've got a Mac Mini over. You can't see this, obviously, everybody, but I'm pointing. And I have an Android phone in my pocket. So I'm agnostic. They all suck in just different ways. But she would just get a pop-up of a drive or whatever. I'm like, you know what? Stop. And I just got her a MacBook Air. And she's never had a problem because all she's doing is Home Shopping Network email, and looking at pictures of her grandchildren, and that's it. And she just doesn't need Windows for that, because Windows will inevitably come up and say, Windows Defender. And I'm like, oh, no, stop. I don't want to hear it,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, right. My mother ended up with an iPad, and that might have been the saving grace, because it's such a simple device, and she has simple needs anyway. And it's, she's just never going to figure this stuff out. So that made sense to me. But, like your mother, I guess, she is worried about being scammed all the time, because this is very common, and she's experienced it. And I had the conversation, this was probably last fall or something. She called me one day and she said, I think someone is trying to steal your son's identity. I've been getting these like scam text messages. And I was like, could I see one of them? You look at it, you're like, no, that's Mark. That's the kid. He's trying to reach you. He's going to visit the area. He wants to see you. She's like so afraid of everything now. She didn't even realize it was her real grandkid trying to just go see her,
I don't know if your mother did this with you when you were young. Did you have a code word in case somebody was going to grab you? Did your mother do that? Because my mother did. We had a code word. And I said, Mom, if they don't know, I still remember it. So I'm like, if they don't know the code word, they're not real. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. And I said, here's the word.
How old are you? And how old are you?
I am 48. So
okay. So you're about 10 years younger than me. And where did you grow up?
I was in New York. So it was,
okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up outside of Boston, but
well, Red Sox go to hell. Continue.
Yeah, no, just ditto for the Yankees. Sure. But I had an event. I don't know what to call it. In the 5th grade, I went to a different school. It was because of this art stuff. I had gone to a summer art program, and it was at a school, and it was a private school, and they let me go for free, basically. And my parents were like, yeah, of course. And it was a waste of time, actually. But during that year, we had different vacation schedules. So I would sometimes be around. So I could walk by the elementary school I used to go to. I would see the crossing guard I used to know, and I would say hi to her and stuff. And I'd go to the library. I love to read, and I was very clearly being followed around by a car. Like, I had this experience as a kid, and I was not prepared for it. There was no one ever talked to me about like someone might want to take you. That was not a thing. I grew up in a world where we just outside. The rule was like, the lights come on at night, you come in. That's when you have to come home. And it's not like that anymore. And I think it's like I'm sure it is some cascading series of terrible events over time or whatever. But it ended up being fine. Nothing happened or whatever. But I distinctly just remember being very confused by it, which is why I stay inside all the time.
You know what? You were probably just ahead of all the serial killer stuff like Ted Bundy and all the rest of that, because I remember that being around when I was really young.
Oh, yeah. I think it was right around that time. Yeah. 70s.
Yeah. So that's probably what it was. You probably were just ahead of it, and people weren't thinking about strangers. Because I remember, don't take a quarter from a guy in a van. Don't take free kids. Like, I remember all these basic things where like now it's almost a joke, but I'm like, oh no, I remember my mother sitting me down.
We lived a kitty corner from the elementary school that I went to, the one I just referenced, and I was walking to school one morning. This guy's over by his car, and there were 2 of us, but he goes, hey, you kids want to see something? And today you'd be like, oh my, red flag. But what he showed us was there were 2 raccoons inside the car, and they were sleeping under the dashboard kind of, and they'd just gotten in. He's like, this is amazing. And it was like, this is a simpler time. I mean, it was just like a random stranger approaches 2 children in the street to show them something in their car, and it's perfectly innocent. But
today a kid would pull out a 9mm and start firing. I mean, no, that would never happen.
Exactly. I need you to understand I'm recording everything you're doing. Yeah, it's a different world.
Boy, is it? And now it's like, and all these parents have the things on their kids' phones so they could see where they are. And I'm like, oh man, I would not have been able to do 90% of the things I did when I was a kid with this thing running. They would have known exactly where I was. I'm like, I don't know what that leads to. I'm not saying that's bad or anything, but it is dressed. Again, this is that pre-everything computerized, because if I was snatched and somebody found me, you'd say that's the best thing you ever did, because otherwise you'd be dead in a forest somewhere. And
but if your parents were stalking around the world and constantly, there's good, like I said, pros and cons to everything. I mean, my kids were right at the beginning of the smartphone thing and pre-iPhone really, and then iPhone, as it happened. But, when my son was an older teenager, he's a super good guy. He's a great man now, but, he's a teenager, right? So, he'd lie to you, whatever, he's doing whatever. He got in trouble for something. I don't remember what it was. And my wife said to him, look, you're not leaving the house for the next week, but you can go to the gym. That's the one place you can go. So he would go out, and then she would say to him, text him probably, I don't remember, but she said, you have to send me a photo from at the gym. So he sent a photo, and my, my wife comes over. She's, look at this picture. It was like a gym with the TV up in the corner. I'm like, yeah, whatever. She goes, what's on the TV? And I'm like, a Patriots game, football, whatever. She goes, yeah, it's July. I was like, huh. And it was just a photo he had. So then I didn't stalk my kids. Like I never did this, but I looked up whatever it was, the iPhone thing, probably find my kid or whatever, whatever it's called at the time. And sure enough, he's behind some school with his friends hanging out, not at the gym. And that's what kids do, And so it's like, we all have to take responsibility to some degree, I guess. But
yeah, I remember my father talking to somebody about, and I remember him saying he's not on drugs and he didn't get a girl pregnant. Fine. It's like anything else he was responsible for. I'm like, wow, that's the metric that apparently divides good kid from bad kid. Not on drugs, never got a girl pregnant. Okay, got it. Now I know where my line is, so I can just destroy your car and you'll let it go as long as I wasn't on drugs at the time.
Bar, I guess. I don't know.
It was an interesting insight into my father's psychology, which again told me, a couple things about his back, because I'm sure that's what it was for his parents was, okay, that's what they worried about. Your kid's strung out on drugs, or suddenly this girl I've been dating for a week is going to have a baby. And it's like, oh, what do we do now?
There's always
different
this,
generations.
Yeah, this is kind of parenting dynamic where you're either going to be too strict, which, we call these people helicopter parents now. We didn't really have these terms when I was a kid, but whatever. Or you're going to be super not strict, and then there's some spectrum in between. But there's also this thing where parents kind of give up their responsibility in certain circumstances because they're just exhausted. They can't take it anymore. Like the first friends we had who had a kid would bring the kid over, and he would just run around like a little monster, destroying everything. And they were just like, we're so glad we don't have to watch him right now. We're like, and you see that in, I think I brought this up recently on some podcast, but it could be, there's something as extreme as like a school shooting or some mother blaming AI on something their kid didn't do, or it's like, excuse me, nobody is shooting people because they heard an AC/DC song, and no one is, ultimately this responsibility is yours. As a parent, if they're underage or whatever. We're so quick to like just blame something, and not either take personal responsibility if you can. Obviously, if it's something addictive, there's nothing you can do about that. But or a parent, like the kind of parenting responsibility if it's someone who you're responsible for, and you just, people just give up sometimes.
Well, it's similar to the pro cons thing, because there is two sides to that as well. Is you can if you watch every single move, that's not necessarily going to produce an individual who can function without you watching every single move. There has to be some level of independence for you to function. They're not going to be home.
They're not going to have the skills they need to survive as an adult.
Yeah. And and this is something I've heard parents bring up when they're both working. Is like, hey, we both have to work to survive. We cannot watch them every minute, and there's stuff going on. We're trying. So there's two sides to that as well. Because I agree, you can't just say, okay, they went to Facebook and suddenly they decided to steal cars and set fires to buildings.
Mm-hmm. No. Yeah, it's our funny video. We're going to do this now.
Yeah, it's not quite that. You don't go that quick unless there's a bigger problem that you've somehow missed for a number of years. But on the other hand, it can be really easy to not realize that stuff is going on with your kids because you are literally too tired to notice every little detail. Because I got away with a lot of stuff because my father would come home, he'd work 12 hours, and my mother was working an 8 or 9 hour day, and they were exhausted, and I would wait till they fell asleep, and then I'd sneak out of the house. That's not really. Now, again, I never did anything too destructive.
And also anything. Different era. This is probably safer in some ways than maybe doing it today, depending where you live. I don't know.
But had I done something stupid, I wouldn't be able to say, well, my parents let me do it. No, they didn't. They were passed out because they were trying to make sure I didn't die when it got cold one night. Because that's what you have to work for, is to just stay alive. So yeah, it is, as with many things, it's a middle ground idea. So you have to go, okay, either side of this on the far ends is not going to work. You have to figure out.
It depends on the kid too. There are some kids who just are great. My kids were always pretty great. And still are, right? I have one of my best friends, unfortunately, his wife's sister and her husband passed away in an auto accident. They had adopted the two kids, and they were both kind of a mess. And one of them turned out great, and the other one did not, And they tried everything they could to solve this problem, and there was no solving it. And I said, look, you guys are batting 500. It's easy for me on the outside to assess this and say it's fine. Sometimes you can't fix the problem. It's not you. At least you're trying. A lot of people just give up. you know.
So let's talk about Windows.
Okay.
Because
yes.
I suspect you're the same as me. I truly inside love Windows, and I don't want it to become an Apple-only world. I think that's a terrible thing. But then I look at Windows feels like in the early days, you'd have to have a book to figure out how it worked because it was not user-friendly. And now you need a book to turn off. Right. Your books. Early days, how do I use this? Today, how do I turn off all the shit that's getting in the way of me using what I want to use? And I don't know. You have the best insight, I would think, of anybody I could talk to about this because you've been covering for so long. Why did this happen? Because Microsoft still dominates, largely in business, enterprise, lots of places. And yet, I don't understand why it is the way. I mean, my wife hates Windows 11 with a vitriol. She's the sweetest woman in the world. Wants to take in every stray animal. Somebody has a problem, she goes helps them. All this stuff. But you mentioned Windows 11. You know Judge Doom when the eyes come out. That's it. She turns into Judge Doom at the end of Roger Rabbit. Sorry if that's a spoiler for people. You should have watched the movie by now. But right. I'm sitting there going, I used to love Windows way more than I ever liked. And I have my problems with Mac OS. Don't get me wrong. I got lots of problems with it. But I'm just sitting there going, what the hell happened that this is like this?
Again, we have 2 hours.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how to.
If you can summarize down to 1,000 words.
How do I say this? So, I mean, obviously the world has changed, right? So Windows evolves with it. One of the things that you would buy a book to find out everything that was in Windows because there was no other way to find those things out, right? These things weren't well documented or documented at all. We didn't have the internet, you know. When you have a book like Windows, whatever, Secrets, and now the internet's there and everyone can publish blog posts about every little thing in Windows, you know, your kind of headspace shifts a little bit as a writer anyway. I want to be super clear. I don't mean this seriously, but there's a part of me that thinks Microsoft's inability to communicate effectively over the years has given me a career, which I do sort of appreciate on some weird level, even though it makes me insane. Microsoft and shitifying Windows in recent years, especially in Windows 11, but it started earlier than that, but it's escalated, is in some ways a gift because it does give me the ability to help people have this problem. You know, people who don't understand what I'm doing because they don't pay attention to it. And I have no problem with that. Well, you know, I got an email from this guy out of the blue. He's like, I can't believe you still support Microsoft and Windows. They're so terrible, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, you obviously don't know what I'm doing. I just wrote a book called De-Shitify Windows 11. I mean, I've never been here to be a cheerleader for Microsoft or Windows. I'm here to help the people who use the product, you know, and to help them make best use of it. And these days, increasingly, it's often about getting rid of the bad things that are in Windows, you know, to however you can do that, either by using stuff that's built into Windows or third-party utilities or whatever it might be. And so I just spent a lot of time on that. You know, I don't want it to be this way. Microsoft is like Apple this year, focusing on kind of low-level quality improvements to the system, not a lot of big bang features, et cetera. It's great, you know, and it's going to eliminate some of the complaints I've had, but I know in assessing it, it does not eliminate the biggest complaints I have. And so my role is secure, I guess, for a little while anyway. The other thing that just tied to this is I've spent a good chunk of this year. I've always done this to some degree, you know, looking at alternatives, right? I started experimenting with Linux in the mid 1990s. I bought an iBook when Apple announced Mac OS 10 or the release of the first version, so I could try it, you know, before it was even the default OS or whatever. But I've always done this to some degree. But this year I've really escalated that because there's a lot of pushback against Windows, you know, kind of what you're saying, really. And do alternatives make sense? Like, does this make more sense? And the alternatives gotten a lot better. Obviously, Apple, Mac OS, or even an iPad are the most polished, but, you know, Linux of every variety, Chromebooks, you know, whatever, things are improving. But, you know, for me, I still, you know, it's interesting. I mean, all these years later, all these months of really heavy testing of this stuff, I still feel that you can kind of clean or de-bloat or de-shitify, however you want to say it, Windows 11 today, and it's still better, you know, than switching to some alternative. And better, it means all kinds of things. It's more familiar. Obviously, I built up decades of whatever skills, but I just prefer it. It's kind of a subjective, I don't know. I use a Mac and like 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, right. God, this makes me insane. Like, I can't stand the way the Finder works. I can't stand the way certain things works. I'm using an iPhone right now. I showed my wife this. I was trying to I had to fill out a form in an app, and the virtual keyboard pops up, and it's over the button I have to click to get by it, and I can't just hit enter on the keyboard. There's on Android, you can get rid of the keyboard. You can't do that on iOS, and I'm like, it's like it's insanity to me. So yeah, Apple doesn't get everything right. I know everyone, like all their fans think they do. I could point out a million little stupid things with Apple's products, but they're all deeply flawed. I don't know. I guess the grass is greener kind of thing. I don't know. But
no,
Windows still
I'm the same way.
Me.
I used to be the only maniac around who would, anytime somebody would say, because obviously being a creative, I was around a lot of people who would say, "Oh, Photoshop is so much better on a Mac than it ever will be on Windows." And I'm like, "You are so full of shit. It is not any goddamn." I mean, it was just. I used to scream at people.
For a long period of time, it was absolutely better on Windows. And if any, I don't know today. I don't use it anymore, but I can't imagine it's any different, really. I mean, I'm assuming
now most of the big apps have parity on whatever OS you use, and that has solved a lot of the early problems. So Photoshop is no different. Really, it becomes system config is, like I had this machine built with an entire scratch disk just for Photoshop because I'm like, I know what Photoshop does, right? So it is weird that Premiere does seem to work much better on Mac OS for no discernible reason because everything else about them is the same. So there is something going on there, but I think it came
late to Mac OS, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Windows first, and then they finally ported it later, I think.
But that's the interesting part of it is if you play games, you really have no choice but to like Windows. And I feel like if either Linux, which seems unlikely, or Mac decides to really be serious, which also Apple just doesn't seem to be interested in gaming, which you sit there and go, this is the greatest set of geniuses in the world and they haven't realized that their Achilles heel is gaming if they really want to make traction? Do they just always want to pretend to be the smallest guy around when they clearly are not anymore? Is that what we're doing? Because that's what it feels like to me. Because otherwise, why not?
This is a tough one. On the Linux side, thanks to Valve and SteamOS, they have this, Proton compatibility layer, which I guess is, I've seen it. I mean, it works, it's pretty good. It's not, you're not going to get 100%. I mean, there's Call of Duty, for example, you cannot play on Linux because it requires some anti-cheat thing that is not on Linux and whatever, on and on we go. But, the Mac has kind of surprised me because I think the tech is good. And I think it's just Apple's whole thing is like, we're not going to emulate games. You just bring them to us. You got to bring them, you got to port them over. And it's like, nobody kind of wants to do that. So Windows through inertia it even hurts like Windows on ARM. I mean, there are modern Windows on ARM laptops now that could absolutely play games wonderfully, but those games are all x86 and they would have to run emulated. And they just they don't even try to make them work in many cases. So a lot of them don't.
And to bring it kind of back around, maybe that's something where AI could do it because the developer doesn't want to tear his hair out for 3 years trying. So just tell this thing, figure it out.
Yep.
And the game would be available. See, it's not all bad, everybody.
I feel like that is happening to some degree and will continue and escalate. I would just say one of the great, we talk about this on Windows Weekly a lot. One of the great things that's occurred the past year is using AI like Mythos or whatever the M-dash thing Microsoft's working on to find vulnerabilities in software is the same thing. It's this, people talk about like, open source, like anyone could put their eyes on the code. We're going to find problems. Yeah, no one ever does. But AI can put its eyes on the code and then it finds problems. That's wonderful. Like the Firefox it kind of started with, but all the big companies are starting to do this. This is huge. And yeah, that kind of porting thing, or I always talk about now the last couple of years, like let's just like port the NT kernel to Rust, just make it more secure. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's overly simplistic. I'm like, actually, I don't think it is. I think we could do this right now. I bet they're working on it right now.
Oh yeah, sure. They would be nuts not to be trying to do that at this point. But yeah, it's baffling because there's so much I still, like you, I'll go into, because I kind of work 50-50. And so I'll go into Mac and I'll be like, why is it that I can't just, because in Windows, if I just need another Explorer window, it's like one button. Just click it, another Explorer window. In Mac, I have to right click, new Finder window, and it doesn't always come up correct. I'm like, there's weird things.
It's way worse than what you just said. So like the depending on how you're using a Mac, you can have apps in full screen mode, which are essentially virtual desktops, which means you have to swipe over to get to where the Finder is. And from there, you can do like a whatever it is, Command N to bring up a new window. But if that window is full screen, that or is or isn't full screen, it depends on how you can get to it. And you can be in situations where you can't just get to it to do a new window. It's like it's or you. One of the big problems with the Mac is the way every app handles multiple windows differently. So if you're using like a browser like Chrome, like on Windows, you just alt tab to every window. On the Mac, you can alt tab to one of those windows. And then the way you get to the other windows is different on every app. I install a utility in the Mac to fix that. It makes me insane. But I don't understand how these things are just, I'm not like a genius. I'm not like a UX expert or anything. I just use things. I'm like, what? Why does this thing not? I mean, people use these things. People at Apple who are good at this. How do you not notice this? It's bizarre to me.
Yeah. I agree. That's what makes it frustrating, because then I'll go back to Windows, and literally every time Windows updates, it pops up with this Windows Defender warning about turning on endpoint security. I'm like, I don't need that, and I'll say no, and it's like, and then it comes up and says, do you want to allow that modification to happen? And it almost tricks you, because you're allowing Windows to modify itself based on your choice. And I'm like, yes, and then it still has that I can't stand those little like exclamation point. So it's still there. I have to do it twice for it to actually go away until the next upgrade. And I'm like, again, like Mac, who's using this? Who is actually using this stuff?
Right. How did this pass through to external testing, let alone just go to the public?
But then simultaneously, I have this huge frustration because I really liked Windows Phone and they bailed on it. And I thought Windows Phone would have been if we had 3 options now, it would be great, because I don't like either of the ones that we have. I'm just going with Android because apparently Apple thinks I shouldn't be able to reskin my icons on my own phone, because I guess I don't own it or something. So That's why I've got Android. But I love Windows Phone, and I would have loved if we had a Metro thing.
So the amount of problems on both mobile platforms are, again, 2 hours. So one of the things, I don't mind the Apple UI for the most part. They've kind of caught up in some of the customization stuff. You can't do anything you want, for sure. But there are these little things that are in there that you don't even understand they're there, right? So I don't like the iOS camera app. I hate it, So I try third-party apps, and there are some really good ones. But you realize in using them that they're restricted by Apple to do certain things. So if you have a modern iPhone, you can take pictures of like 12, 24, 48 megapixels, raw, not raw, whatever, different formats. And I want to do the middle. I like being able to go from just to 24. You can do that in the camera app. Apple does not let third-party apps do that. You cannot do it. And that's just one of a million little restrictions. It's all about lock-in and keeping you in their ecosystem. And it just harms developers. It harms users. And no one ever complains about it. But you see this, if you know where to look, it's like everywhere. And I would never, I should say we're never going to go back. I hope through maybe antitrust, whatever regulation, that they can rein these companies in. But the kind of Wild West world that is Windows, right? And there's the Mac to some degree, although they've taken minor steps to try to fix that. Or Linux, whatever. I don't think we're ever really going to see this in a mainstream way on mobile, or at least not in the near future that I can see. I don't know. It's a shame,
because that's also one of the things I talk about with Windows is, hey, I can really do anything I want with that machine. Now, including probably destroying it. So there is still a danger in just loading things without really making sure you know what you're doing. Or I can't believe we still have to talk about registry entries, but just editing the registry.
It's not even that. I know what I'm doing. We were away last week. I had 2 laptops because God forbid. And, working on whatever, it doesn't matter what I'm working on, but I had to install a virtual machine on one of the laptops, and I'm going through this process. Lengthy. It takes forever. And it's over there doing it. I'm doing something else. And then it reboots, and it comes up with this no networking capabilities. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. And I go into device manager. I'm doing all the stuff you do, And I couldn't figure it out. I eventually did figure it out, but this thing was down for like 2 hours, and I do know what I'm doing, and I don't know why that happened. It's had something to do, obviously, with the virtual machines, but God help. I always say this, like, God help you. It's a normal person. Why should you have to know how
and even in,
the sausage
gaming,
is made,
you
and you
just
get some random error, whatever it is.
Suddenly a game that ran, I'm trying to remember, this just happened to me, where a game that ran fine suddenly just wouldn't. Oh, we were using, actually it wasn't a game. We're doing stuff with Unreal, the Unreal Engine. We were trying to get this video wall up. And I'm not kidding. We went to lunch and came back, and it would not open Unreal with a
right. It was working fine when you left. Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
And then we had to dig in to find out that there was one checkbox in the NVIDIA control panel that loading one module had checked. And even though it didn't tell us it did it, we had to go in and uncheck it, and then it worked fine. It's like, okay, man. But that took probably half a day for us to figure out because it was, here again, the error codes, while seeming detailed, lengthy, and descriptive, were in fact nothing. They were just a bunch of garbage. That's the same stuff you get every time Unreal crashes. So thanks for nothing there, too. You didn't even help us out in saying there was a problem. Can you tell me... This is, again, this makes me go back to the car example where if a car made a noise in the 70s, you could listen for the noise and you'd know roughly where it is. Whereas today, if your car stops working and it's a giant screen, you might as well just, burn it and buy a new one because who knows if they'll ever... I'm literally going through this now where the dealer can't figure out what's going on with my car, and it's been a year now, and they just keep replacing things, and nothing's... Oh, yeah, well, and they gave me a loaner.
Eventually have a new car, I guess, if they replace enough.
I think I feel like they gave me the new car to see if I just get used to it and be like, well, can I just keep this? Which I won't because it's a giant screen. I'm like, if there's a solar storm, does my car just blow up and I'm dead? What is this? And I can't get used to an all-screen car, which I know I'm going to have to buy something old, but... How does this have to do with Windows? It doesn't, but it does kind of. No,
it's all the same dynamic, really. I mean,
it kind of is where, like you said, no normal person should have to go through these lengths to, and most people are not using the computer the way you and I are. That's the other reality is 80%, 85% are just trying to run Outlook, man. I mean, I just ran into this. Zoom and Teams fighting for some reason because my company, like I guess most, couldn't settle on one. Because they have something with Microsoft, we have to have Teams, but they want Zoom for this. And it's like, all right, how many ways do you have to get in touch with me? Can we just pick one? And then they started fighting where Zoom would just lock the system up. It's just crazy.
This is the biggest problem. So you mentioned Windows Phone. One of the things that they were trying to do, which is a great idea for people. It wasn't a great idea for brands, I guess, was have these centers for things like there were panoramic experiences for like music, videos, whatever. And one of them was for photos. And the idea was, you don't think about like, it's not whack-a-mole. It's like, okay, I want to share a photo. What's the app I use for that? And then you got to go find it wherever it is in the screen. You're like, I'm doing something with photos. I go to photos and it's all in there. It's like, if whatever you connected to, if it was Google Photos, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it was at the time, or Microsoft stuff, obviously, it would just all work in the same place, and you would just choose where you wanted it to go. Such a great idea. They did this with messaging briefly. You could do Skype inside of the text messaging app, but you're not in front of the brand anymore. You're just using it for the thing that it is, which makes so much sense for a person, but it makes no sense for the people who own the brands that are Instagram and Facebook and Google Photos or whatever. And they all said no. There was for 10 seconds, you could also do Facebook Messenger inside that Messages app. And then Facebook realized we're not controlling this relationship anymore. This doesn't make any sense. We're saying no to this. And so we have the system we have. We're like, just stupid grids of icons, And
this reminds me of my favorite mobile OS of all time, which was Palm Pre's WebOS, where it had that messages
when
thing.
You said that, I'm like, WebOS. I know he's going to say
I loved WebOS because I remember the messaging thing, and I don't. It may not have been the first OS to do that, but I remember it was a unified. You just tapped on that one icon, and any message from an integrated app, and of course, this is all pre the stuff you're talking about. It was all just there. And that OS was great, and it died. And I'm like, and I even loved the slip out keyboard. I thought that was nice because if I wanted it, it was dying. That was the best phone. I
literally
can
web technology. It would have been super easy to extend and build apps for. It killed the company just getting it to market. Hardware was underpowered. Like everything went wrong, but I think they were on T-Mobile, which was terrible at the time when they first came out.
And Sprint, because I was on Sprint, which sucked.
Maybe it was Sprint. Okay,
I had to go to the top of my driveway to get reception at times. It was the worst. I remember that.
Right. But it was beautiful,
I could still feel that keyboard, that little kind of squishy key. It was beautiful. It had like rubberized keys. It was just like, oh, this is nice. But if I don't want it, just close it. And it's just a little pill phone.
This was John Rubinstein. He came up out of Next and Apple, and he worked on the iPod, and he took over at Palm. And I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And it was, and for 2 seconds, and then it was gone.
Although I should say, so it doesn't just seem like the doom and gloom show, which it might at this point. There are the rare examples where these things do come back around. I am wearing a Pebble watch, and I ditched the Google Watch for this and have not missed it for even a nanosecond. This thing is magnificent, and everybody thought that was dead and buried, and it was. For a while.
That's funny. I would, if there was a modern Fitbit kind of watch type thing, or just a band, I would probably do that. They're never going to update those things. Gone. Google's busy killing that. Apple Watch or Google Watch 2 is just like, it's too much stuff. Like I'd like to see the time. That's what a watch is, right? But
I'm sorry, you don't want to have to recharge your watch every 7 hours, depending on whether you moved your wrist too much. I don't know what you're talking about. This is ridiculous.
I literally, every day, every single day, which is insane. A Fitbit would last several days a week, whatever. A Kindle, Kindles have battery lives of weeks. And you think, well,
this thing is 3 weeks so far.
That's what I'm saying. Like an e-ink screen on a small device was awesome. Like, it sounds awesome to me. And I don't know. You're never going to get this from big tech. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be who owned the Pebble? Was it Google who owned it and they let it go? I think it was.
Yeah, Google, and Google then they let him have they open source the software. Yeah, Google bought it up for Fitbit, did nothing with it, and now he's got it back. People. It's like the guy who was a YouTuber who bought Commodore and then re-releases the Commodore 64, and there's going to be more of those computers. And then they released a flip phone, which I'm not 100% on board with. But I think this speaks to the thing we were talking about earlier to some degree. People looking for the kind of older, more analog experience. Oh, these are digital things, but less in your face, less, because it's just like all day long. Like, hey. My phone will burble, and I look down at it, and there's nothing there, and I'm like, what? Stop. Yeah. That is the thing where, again, if it's a small team, if the Pebble people came out and said we used AI in something, I wouldn't care. I'd say, okay, if that's how you fix something that wouldn't have worked and that bridged it because you're a team of 6 people. And I mean, because I know that the CEO's like flown back and forth to China because they had some kind of production problem, so he had to go look at it. It's like, okay, that's costing money. So if you can save money and release this Pebble, use whatever you have to. I don't care anymore.
Or just
it's fine.
I don't know if they've done this. They will if they haven't. But use some of the AI source code review stuff to just examine the source code, look for vulnerabilities, look for ways to make it more efficient. When they first announced this, I was like, I'm not really sure about this. And then some of the older squared off devices, you're like, maybe. But some of those devices, they're actually kind of cool looking. And it's like, yes, I think it's something that did less and annoyed me less, Well,
they do. The round version is, I ordered both. I ordered the square and the round because I'm not the biggest square person either, but I was just, I hated the Google Watch so much. I just wanted to be done with it because the amount of times where I'd look at it and it's like dead battery and I'm like, you son of a bitch. I just couldn't.
It's particularly bad. Yeah.
They're all like that. I mean, people be like, okay, well, if you go into your settings and you adjust this, and this, you turn this setting down, then you can have it last 3 days. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I had the old Pebble and it went a week.
There's no version of an Apple Watch lasting more than a day. I mean, maybe an Ultra, a day and a half. I don't know. I don't own one of those. But you have to charge this thing every day.
But again, conversely, I got my mother the Apple Watch because she has heart stuff going on. And I'm like, Mom, this thing will track your heart stuff.
There's definitely benefits to it.
Yeah. So I'm like, just charge it every morning when you're in the shower. It'll charge by the time you're ready to leave the house. And that way, if something happens, they can look at this thing. That's the other side of it is that I want the sensors. If you fall down the stairs, no one's there with you. So please have it call somebody because I don't want you to die at the foot of your stairs because you couldn't reach a phone.
They'll have car crash detection and whatever. They have satellite SOS connectivity if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I mean,
and that's why I say by the time I'm her age, they'll have one that lasts weeks and then I'll have that one because then it'll
by the time I'm her age, I'll need a phone screen or a watch screen that's as big as my phone just to see it, but yes,
No, you'll have smart lenses that will magnify the watch for you. And see, that stuff's all neat. Like, I look forward to that because aging sucks and we all know it when you start aging. So there are things, and like the dementia thing and all that stuff, which is probably going to hit me and my mother. It's like, that would be great to have the whole little dongle thing that would say, no, you already took your medication. Don't take it again. You already took it at 4:00. You're fine because she forgets or whatever. That stuff's all wonderful. That I want to have happen. It's just that, again, and this is kind of what we're talking
wonderful,
about, everybody in charge of it is rotten.
it's the choice thing though, right? So I've spent so much time with an Apple Watch trying to make it simpler. It's really not possible. One of the things that really bothers me with the Fitbit stuff, which goes into Google Watch, is I don't want it to track my sleep because it does a bad job at it, and I don't sleep well anyway. I don't need to be told how terrible I am every morning, and you cannot turn that off. You can it will. You can take off your watch or your device, whatever it is. You can hide the sleep reading in the app so it's not right there on the top of the screen, but you cannot turn it off. Why? That would help the battery. Just don't track my sleep, but it won't do it.
Yeah, that's what we do. My wife and I both take the watches off at night. We don't wear them when we sleep because if I want to feel like crap in the morning, I'll look in the mirror. That's what it's there for. I don't need a watch to tell me that, but but you're right. That is really at the heart of a lot of this. And I think to go back to the AI thing, it's inevitable and you will use it or you will be on the street or whatever. I heard somebody, and I couldn't believe this response. I really couldn't, because I went, this is the problem right here. Is that, the college kids were booing all the speakers and all that stuff. And of course, all the anti-AI people were like, yay. And all the pro-AI people are like, no, you just don't get it. You're wrong. The Jensen Wong, no, you're just wrong thing. And I heard somebody when they were discussing this, and he said, well, that's on them. Learn AI, bro. That was the response. And I went, okay, these kids are going to walk out with how many years of debt? Because I know I had to pay my loan off. It didn't get forgiven. And they're going to have to too, even though I'm fine with it getting forgiven for them because I don't need other people to suffer for me to feel better. So it wouldn't bother me, but they walk out and you're telling them, oh, the job you've just, thought you were setting up for all this time, gone. Don't worry about it. And I'm sitting here going, what does just learn AI mean to you? What does that statement mean? Rather than give a thoughtful, compassionate, empathetic response saying, find the thing you're passionate about, figure out how AI makes sense if it does. If not, ready yourself to go into an interview.
Using software to do everything.
But there's another side to that, because I watch a lot of stuff with like designers who are all in a panic about the AI thing because they're all flipping out. And I'm like, and a lot of them, the smart ones have pointed this out. They're saying, if you walk in and you can't distinguish yourself from a tool, you already don't deserve that job. That's a different thing than saying just use AI. You have to go in there and say, well, the thing I'm bringing to this is, who's the message for? What can I contribute uniquely? That's the thing that people shouldn't be afraid of, is understand what your value is. And then AI doesn't compete unless your only value is reading Excel, in which case you're going to eat a gun, because who wants to read Excel all day for their entire life? So you have to.
I have a friend
who
very much wants that. So you would have heard me give this example, but it's still relevant to me because, like I said, I have friends who are graphic designers, and we've talked about this a little bit, and I honestly, they're way cooler with this than I would have imagined. But yeah, so I will so I've had this website, right, for, we'll call it a decade. And when I first started it, I think we subscribed to 2 different stock photo services, and I would go to them and search for something to find an image to put on an article. And in a given day, I could write 1, 2, 3, 10 articles. It doesn't matter. They all have to have an image, at the top. Some of those images are already in there because it's just a thing nothing unique, but sometimes you want something very unique, especially I read it in an editorial or whatever it might be. So you spend some time on this, but the thing is, I guess we're paying artists in this case, or photographers. But this is not unique to me, right? So if I found a beautiful image of whatever it is, I will see it on someone else's website tomorrow. It doesn't matter if it's good enough, so other people are going to use it, And one of the nice things about AI, even though you could make the argument, fair enough, a lot of these things look alike to some degree, and I think that's getting better, whatever. But I can create something that's unique to my thing, right? So, okay, that's a small thing, but whatever. But you're putting a graphic artist out of work, or a photographer, or whatever. The thing that those people can't do is I call them or text them or whatever, and you're like, look, I wrote a throwaway web article. It's one of 10 that I'm writing today, but I do need an image. This is what I want it to be, but here's what I want you to do. Create 4 versions of it immediately, and then let me look at all 4, and I'll be like, okay, these 3 are garbage, but this one's pretty good, but I want you to make this one change, and then make 4 variations of that, and then I pick one and it goes on the article, and there's no human being who can do what I just described. So am I taking someone's job away? I mean, I guess technically in a way, but it's benefiting me more than the alternative. It costs less and it's better. So it's not so much that that person is valueless as whatever they are, a graphic artist, a photographer, whatever. It's just that for my needs, and I think for a lot of needs, this thing just makes more sense. It's more efficient. It's more cost effective, whatever, however you want to say it. And in my, it's unique to me, in this case. So it's,
it's a balancing act because could you afford to hire a graphic designer full time to do that type of image work at that speed? Probably not, because the rates would be
at any speed. I couldn't. Right. That's the thing. I mean, I could.
Even if somebody could, they'd be charging you an arm and a leg to do it. Let's assume somebody was skilled. I'm sure somebody is. There's probably a graphic designer who can crank out multiple variations, within 5 minutes, but they would be unaffordable. So now, on the other hand, do I think, because this is my classic example for my problem with generative AI specifically, because I like to make nice dividing lines. We're not talking about analytics. Love the analytical side. Please cure cancer for me, AI, as soon as possible. But in the generative creative spaces, the problem I really have is if I use any of these tools, whichever one, doesn't even matter, and I create an image of Mickey Mouse smoking pot that suddenly lights on fire and everybody's buying it, I'm reasonably sure a lawyer will find me. And that lawyer is going to represent a company that will decimate me in court and make it, I won't be able to afford a McDonald's Happy Meal until I'm dead, if then. And that protection doesn't exist for small artists whose stuff gets ingested and used. But Disney can do it. And my whole thing is, my argument goes away if everybody gets compensated. And the problem is, and again, this goes into the larger issue, is it's everybody who has the money for 1 million lawyers that's going to be able to secure their livelihood, and everybody else doesn't.
Yep.
And that
this is kind of always been the case. But yeah, you use Adobe products. Like Adobe will indemnify you if you use Firefly to generate whatever it's been trained on the images they own, et cetera, et cetera. Microsoft does this, I think, maybe just in the commercial space to some degree. So there's that kind of protection. But yeah, I mean, the people are going to lean in the most to these kind of AI things that will write emails for them, write letters, write articles, create images, whatever, are probably the ones that are least, I don't know, sophisticated about the legal implications or the IP infringement or whatever it might be. So yeah, they're going to be, some of them are going to get in trouble. We've already seen many examples, like lawyers creating legal briefs that are full of fake, witnesses to crimes, or fake case studies, or fake, law, or what do you call it, rulings from the past, or whatever it might be. And there's going to be a lot of this. And
that's what you just referenced with Microsoft. One of the things I like about Adobe, and I do a lot of their sit down focus groups, because obviously I can just talk forever and I can complain forever. So they love me. But one of the things I've pointed out is that Firefly approach is, I think it's very considered, and it's really trying to thread a difficult needle. Now, Adobe has a lot of other problems in the way that they're making creators want to hate them. And many of them are self-generated, like a lot of these companies, where you sit there and go, have you talked to an actual person lately before you made this decision, announced it, and then said, what do you think? Maybe do a bit of pre-consultation. That's smart to say, all right, our model is protected. If this is something that's important to you, use that. Anything else, we'll let you plug into it, because they have the plugins to a lot of the image models. But
now you're on your own.
They're saying you're outside the wall of our protection now. And I think that's, for all the criticisms I can level at Adobe about things, that's actually very smart. And that's because I think that's based on Adobe stock, and you can opt in or opt out of that. And I've been fine opting in that with my stuff, because I'm like, I think Adobe's trying to do this correctly. But again, the thing that I understand why a lot of creators who are full-time creators and barely making ends meet, why they're infuriated, is because it's already hard enough. And now and this isn't really true, but it feels true. It's one of those examples. This thing is duplicating my work for somebody else, and they're not paying me. Now, it's not really doing that, but in fairness, again, you couldn't make a Mickey Mouse picture and sell it online
unless
everywhere.
You've somewhere seen Mickey Mouse, and then,
or you're in another country where they can't reach you. Otherwise, you're going to get stopped.
And that does not seem fair. And it isn't pinatas in Mexico that I'm pretty sure are not officially licensed. Homer Simpson's pretty big.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. We also, I remember being in malls and people were airbrushing Mickey Mouse, giving the finger to somebody in a studded leather jacket. Disney didn't care about that one little stall in the mall because it wasn't making any money. But if it made money, again, a team of guys in suits with briefcases. You'd see them coming down, and like this, the sea with Moses, the waves would part, and I'd walk in, and that stall would be a crater in 15 minutes, and that'd be it. So
normally,
that is,
yeah, if this wasn't AI and if we didn't know what had happened, I think I would have said that, look, we have technology to prevent this. We could just do this, but AI barrels ahead with no regard to legality or anything else, which I think is also part of the problem, right? When people have that knee-jerk reaction, they may not, when we say all these simple things like, if you don't pay for the product, you are the product, or we sort of vaguely understand Google is tracking us everywhere we go, but we have this agreement of sorts. It's not a literal agreement, but we understand, like, we're going to use Google Maps because it gets us there, and we couldn't live without that, or whatever tool we're using. But we also know they're watching us and doing things and whatever, and that's the trade-off. But we really don't know the depth of it. And when you do start seeing that stuff, it becomes a little eye-opening. And I think AI is even worse, right? Because it's literally stealing the world's content. These are all out of date, out of published. They're not active current books, but Anthropic stole a bunch of books. I think 8 of them were mine. I'm going to get part of some settlement. It will be $0 to next to $0 whenever it happens, but that was their decision. And there were people in the company who were like, we could just buy these things used for like nothing. And if they had, it would have been fine, but they didn't, for some of them, for a lot of them. And that's the thing. Have you ever seen Sam Altman? Do you trust this guy? Would you leave your kids alone with this guy? These people are all terrible. There's maybe a few small exceptions, but like the people who are leaders at every big tech company are by and large, like it's like a photo of like Hitler's henchmen. Like, it's just they're the most horrible people on earth.
And the statements they make reflect a non-connection with other corporeal human beings. And you sit there and go, this person, I don't remember what Altman said, something about, well, it only takes this long to train an AI, but it takes years to train a person. As if those are comparable things. And you sit there and go, and you're worth how many billions of dollars? I know. You're sucking up every piece of information, and I'm supposed to think that you're trustworthy?
Every ounce of electricity and every ounce of water, and you are horrible. Yeah, and you are probably going to tank our entire economy single-handedly. Thanks.
Well, that's the other thing too, which you probably have some stake in as well, is the personal computing. So I've watched a lot of these videos, which are concerning about. Obviously, all the component prices have spiked outside of monitors, and there's like 2 things. It's monitors are still the same price. You can get them actually pretty cheap. And then there was one other component. The cases, but the components you can't afford to put in. And I guess the fans.
Yeah. You can have a beautiful empty case
with a fan and cool nothing, which is great. But because I've been watching like the Gamers Nexus stuff, and he went to Computex, and he's talking to all these guys, and they're like, some of these companies are just going to be gone. And if the bubble pops and it crashes, they're still going to be gone, because now all their stuff's worthless because it's so cheap. And where is personal computing? And again, it gets you into, you own nothing and you'll subscribe to virtual computers. That may be fine for some people, but some people want some control over their computing devices.
It's not, I don't even want control. I don't even think of it that way. It's not even privacy. It's not, I don't know what you want to call it. Control, I guess. I just want my thing. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I want to do my thing, and I want to be done doing it. Like, I don't want to go through your hoops and do your things and have ads pop up. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to like click something with the mouse, if it's Windows or whatever, and this thing slides up and it's like, hey, would you like to, whatever the stupid thing is the PC maker's trying to sell me. And it's like, guys, geez, like could we just, our relationship is I bought the computer and you got some money. Can we just end it there? Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I have
a Logitech light, this light over here. And every time I have to open the Logitech software, it's got a friggin' ad next to me just saying, turn on light.
That's insanity.
Why?
Yeah.
You realize you're making me, I used to have a lot of Logitech stuff, and that's part of the reason I'm like, goodbye. I don't watch you anymore.
So in other words,
you just won't leave me alone.
When it comes time to do something new, you're like, I'm not getting that thing. I'm done with these people. And it's harder and harder to find, whatever it is, hardware, software, or whatever it is that isn't like that, which is kind of, I think of this as little tech now, because I'm super inventive, but, these companies that actually exist to make whatever it is, hardware, software, services that, we do it the old fashioned way. We try to meet the needs of our customers. They pay us and we give them a service. It's like, yes, I want this kind of healthy, non-toxic relationship, it's lacking everywhere else, everywhere in big tech for sure. It's a big problem. big problem.
Yeah, and I don't know if this stuff, because like you said, it's just, the other problem is the AI thing. It's not like, there's people like, oh, just destroy all AI. Okay, gang, I got news for you. That ain't happening. Even if we wanted it to, you can't do it. And plus, the tool's not the problem. It's like a hammer. You can build a house, you can cave in a skull. It's a hammer. So it's not that. But I do think, and some of this is just that, again, the tool gets mixed in with the intent of the people who control it. And that's where the problem is, okay, there was, I think, again, NVIDIA was like, oh, we can just put little data centers on everybody's houses. There's an idea. You won't be able to control it.
Better than putting them in space.
But it's especially because from what the one thing, there's a lot of copper in there, which is one of the things that gets ripped off from anything. So you're going to put a thievery target on my lawn so that I can provide you more billions to buy leather jackets. That's the transaction we're doing now. Does that make... And that's really what it is. If these companies started off in places where people had a reasonable belief that they were acting out of, at the very least, a parity of concern. Okay, maybe they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart because that don't work too well in capitalism. Sorry to let everybody know who's never taken an economics class. But at least it was a transactional relationship where the two sides seemed to be symbiotic. You'd say, okay.
That's what I mean. Like you're paying for a service. You see the value as the customer.
Yes.
They're providing you a service. They see the value in the money you give them for the service they're providing. It's a good relationship.
That's reasonable. These
are hard to find. These are
that's the real issue with this stuff is it keeps happening, and it seems to get exponentially worse because, and I'm not going to get political, but I'm going to brush up against it. We're certainly seeing the effects of money in terms of what people's lives are like. You can't pretend that's not happening. At least in this country, I can't speak to anywhere else. I live here.
This is a big problem. So this is almost this is bigger than politics in some ways because it really kind of speaks to what it means to be an American and what we're like as a society, because we have this this country that's like huge. It has all these incredible resources. We all have big yards and big cars, and it's not like Europe where everyone's jammed up against each other, or Europe or Asia where it's even worse or whatever. And it affects our kind of psyche. We have this individualistic kind of streak, and there are lots of positives to this. That we tend to create startup companies, and we have more billionaires than any other country, although China might be lying about that. But we are, whatever rich and whatever we're rich. But it's just, the notion that someone who is a billionaire must be smart because they have $1 billion. A lot of our billionaires were born with gold spoons in their mouths, and then they turn that fortune into silver spoons. And they're not actually that smart, and they're just lucky.
That doesn't seem to be the bio they give when they're on Bloomberg. They seem to
it's not the bio
their way out of a hole
either,
in the backyard in the middle of nowhere with a rake that somebody tried to kill them with, and now they run a multi-billion-dollar company. Are you insinuating that that's not true?
It's stronger than insinuating. Even like I'm not particularly successful and I'm not rich and anything like that. But if someone ever said to me, I want to follow you for whatever reason, I want to do what you did. Like, how do I do it? And I'd be like, I couldn't tell you that. I got lucky. I got lucky at every step of the way. Sometimes I didn't get lucky, obviously. But I mean, I didn't have any grand plan. Like I told you, I went to art school. There was no master plan over here. I had no idea what I was doing. You kind of sleepwalk through life, and whatever happens, and you react to it. And sometimes you do well, and sometimes you don't. I don't know. But to try to take credit for, and by the way, if you're so American that you don't believe what I just said, there are too many examples of companies or people who were successful doing one thing and then tried to keep doing that same thing over and over again. It never works again. It's always diminishing returns, and then it just never works. It stops working. You see this with Microsoft. They had this business model with Windows that went gangbusters until it didn't, I guess. And then they tried to duplicate. It got to the point where it was so ludicrous. They had something on the Mac called Windows Media Player from Mac. It's like, guys, we lost the script here. Like, what do you like? Stop, So you're not that inventive as it turns out over there. But that's true. It's everywhere. It's universal.
Yeah, but like I said, that to me feels like it's actually at the root of a lot of this. It's not that it's that they don't feel like there is And I know that somebody will say, well, life isn't fair, so what do you want? And it's like, well, can I advance a theory that maybe we could make it more fair, since we're all human beings on a planet breathing air?
It's less fair than it's ever been, in the sense that the discrepancy between wealth and poverty is the greater than it's ever been. The smallest number of people with the most amount of money versus the rest of the planet. And then if you're the rest of the planet, which you are statistically, then why would you be looking up to the 3 or 5 idiots who got lucky and think they must be onto something? I should just do whatever they say, because they're not telling you to do stuff that's going to help you, idiot. They're doing stuff that's going to help them. That's part of the reason they're successful. Maybe it's part of the reason they're trying to stay successful, certainly. But I don't know.
Also,
not a lot of clear
I think if you start to actually look at the way their wealth exists and how it's generated and swapped between them all, you start to figure out that this is, in fact, to some degree, monopoly money that just happens to be backed by real money. And it's just a bunch of nonsense. And that's not even getting into the whole way the market works, and the fact that you can't just be successful. You have to be successful with X% of growth ahead of you. Otherwise, there's a problem.
I talk about this so much because I write, I cover, I'm going to say 12 to 15 companies' financials every quarter. It's a nightmare.
I feel so bad. I don't know how you don't just lose your mind.
It's the worst time I have writing. I hate it so much. And the whole Wall Street thing, which is literally just black magic and marketing, it's nonsense. Stock price and then valuations and market caps and things. It's so ridiculous. Intel, which couldn't make a decent microprocessor to save its life, stocks has exploded this year because there's all these news stories about how, this is going to happen or this is going to happen. None of it's happened. Their stock price has been up 15 to 20% since somebody announced that Apple was going to start using their stuff. It's never been announced. They've never actually announced it, and Apple can't use their stuff. It's too antiquated. But okay, I mean, we'll see what happens there. Something will happen, but it won't be as exciting as people think. And I just don't. This is I joke, you would have heard me say something to this effect. It's like, this is how we get Snicker bar cereal. It's like you have this company that's super successful selling a thing, but they have to keep growing because that's what capitalism is. You don't get to a point where we're just super excited you're at this level. Everything's great. Wall Street's going to kill you for that. You have to keep growing. So you got to expand, and you expand into these things that are sort of in the same area. And you come up with a candy bar cereal, which doesn't make any sense objectively.
What was it? Allbirds or whatever, the sneaker company that's AI now for no reason that makes any sense. But except that the fact that the letters AI will generate some kind of attention and
now
growth,
you're getting a stock boost, and it's because that stuff's real in the sense that not what they're doing is real, but your valuation goes up. You're able to use more money to spend for your growth, and maybe you do something that actually is central to your business, or you don't if you're not a good business person. I don't know, but it's just, I hate it so much. Like, I hate this part of our world so much, and there's no escaping it. Microsoft, Apple, Google, whatever, these ginormous companies, great market power, make a ton of money. And if they don't move things double digit every quarter in any part of it, it's a nightmare, for them financially, because of Wall Street and analysts and.
And here, just to make everybody feel even worse, let me give you the other side of it too, which is there's a company that makes Mac products that I actually dearly love because they're a small independent outfit. The name of the company is Rogue Amoeba. They make like Audio Hijack and Fargo, all this stuff I use all the time.
I will know this company, but I do not. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. It's actually, I do want to try to talk to them at some point because they're a small outfit. They only make a small suite of very specific audio products. That's all they make. They're not doing video or anything, at least not yet. And I'm sitting here going, please, nobody acquire you, because then it's dead. Right now, they focus, like when I've had to contact their support people, they're actual people. They get right back to you. They want you to follow up. They're willing to set up a meeting. I'm like, this is so rare that somebody makes a good product that works consistently, not part of anything else, not attempting to do anything else. And they're and it's perpetual license. It's not subscription. You buy each version of the product, which I love. I'm like, yep, I'll buy every version you ever put out. Right? And I'm just sitting here going, Apple's either going to gobble these people up and destroy them into Apple 1.7.
Copy it, essentially, which is the bad outcome for these guys, the worst outcome, I guess.
Well, I think you can survive. I agree, most of the time you can't. But I think if a company like this that has built up goodwill, I would not pay Apple for this. I would continue supporting these people because I have a relationship that's been largely positive. It's like your thing about if your first AI experience is bad, that's going to taint everything. Like, say, using Copilot for anything useful. But we won't get into that. So if Apple said we're creating not everything, but the one thing I tried to do with it, it just kept trying to make me waste all my tokens.
I think everything is accurate, but that's okay.
But if Apple came out and said we have a suite of these tools, which some of them they do. I mean, largely GarageBand does some of this, that type of thing. But I'm like, no, I don't. And now I know a lot of their iWork stuff is going to be at least partially subscription based with, Apple's better, huh?
Which
no,
is
it ain't.
No.
But
everything you do on your iPhone stays on your iPhone unless we're talking about the default search that we don't talk about, because that is actually going to Google. But
maybe if you're in airplane mode, that ain't really airplane mode, but we won't get into that either. So yeah, if these people kept going, I'd be like, I'll support you till you close the company, because I have a trust relationship with you. And that's where we've seen that some company sees an actual competitor, at a small scale, who's making a good product. Well, we need to erase that somehow, and it's either gobble or annihilate. It sucks.
There's right. When Microsoft kind of controlled the world, our world anyway, after they destroyed all their big competitors, companies like Lotus and WordPerfect, et cetera, Paradox, whatever. If you were a startup in the space, your goal was to be acquired by Microsoft, right? I mean, that was a pretty good business model. And I think you see that in today's world as well, right? But now it's with different companies. But, you wonder about outcomes sometimes. Like I just mentioned Fitbit, for example. This is a small company. They were good and bad in their own little way, but were acquired by Google. And I'm like, okay, like there's some good there because Google has more resources. Maybe you can put money, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, they're dismantling that brand right now. That's what they're getting rid of Fitbit. As everyone feared, and I wrote it's for 3 years ago. I don't know, just something. I don't remember the exact title was like, please do not kill Fitbit. And they are, it happens a lot.
WebOS too. WebOS got acquired and now it's on crappy TVs.
It's on LG TVs or something. Is that right? Or some kind of TVs? I don't remember.
Yeah, on dishwashers and stuff because, those need operating systems, to wash dishes. Okay, exactly. Great. Sure they do. Because everything has to have a screen and an OS. Like your fridge has to show you a picture of what's inside because the massive effort of opening the door and using those things built into your skull, that would be too much to ask.
I mean this honestly. I'm not being self-deprecating. I am not particularly insightful, but 25 years ago, maybe more, I don't remember. I was talking to someone from Microsoft. They were talking about they were going to have like our screens are going to be smart. They're going to have processors in them. They're going to have these like little operating systems, and they're going to you can run apps and do things. And I was like, why on earth? What are you talking about? You are in a company that knows how terrible computers are, and you're going to put that in other products? Why do you want this? Like we've gone from just for screens, whatever the screen is, where you hit a power button, it comes on to it goes through a boot process. My Samsung TV has been telling me for 3 days I need to install a software update, which I'm never going to do. I don't even know why I'm seeing this thing. Why can't the thing just be the thing? This is like the perfect tool for the job or whatever. Like, why does everything have to be everything? God, can't it be simple?
This is why I have a wireless router and a modem, and they're not one thing. Because then if one dies and the other doesn't,
this is the all-in-one computer problem. If I have an all-in-one computer, the screen dies, I don't have a computer. If I have an all-in-one computer, the computer dies, I don't have a screen.
Why is your TV not on your network? Because it's a TV. And I don't need it to be on my network. Why? So they can make it worse through an update? Because they will.
Exactly.
So, but
I don't know why.
For purpose, again, the Pebbleite, this is why I like this thing, is because it's only trying to do what the creator thinks it makes sense to do as a middleware device. So it only does just enough things.
It's also returned to that thing we were talking. I guess I think of this as little tech, but like this notion of it's a small thing now. It's kind of a homebrew thing. It's individuals, enthusiasts, whatever. They're reaching out to some community to say, hey, what is it you want to see here? What can we do? And this is an awesome thing for people who care about this stuff. That's what you want. I feel like I guess they're looking at feedback now, but I can assure you for the past 5, if not 10 years, you could have sent feedback to Microsoft and they might as well have just flushed it down the toilet. They were not paying any attention to any of it. They were using some telemetry stuff for sure to, fix bugs and things like that. But as far as, I want to move my taskbar to the side of the screen, or I want to do whatever it is people want to do on their computers, and God help them, they do think of it as their computer. Microsoft was not interested, and they were like openly antagonistic to this. And
I would argue Apple is too. How else do you get the touch bar and the butterfly keyboard?
Yes.
These are not things that went through any real sampling. Or liquid glass. Anybody who deals with accessibility even in a minor way would say, why are you blurring things and making it harder to read?
So that one is particularly bad because when Mac OS 10 first came out, obviously based on Next Step, they bring it into Apple. It takes them a couple of years. They figure it out, whatever. They have to come up with this new UI, and the UI at the time was Aqua, right? And it had those gel effects and transparencies and all that stuff, hardware accelerated. It was tough for Microsoft because Windows was just bitmaps. It was kind of antiquated technologically. But the first, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, whatever versions of Mac OS 10, if you brought down like a menu over something, whatever it was, a window with text or the background, it muddied the view was like translucent, like it was muddy looking. It made it hard to read. It was weird. It was also had kind of a ribbed effect, which was stupid back then. But anyway, they eventually got on top of it. They went to more of a platinum look or whatever they call it at the time, and it kind of went away, whatever. Then Microsoft comes around with Vista, and they're making exactly the same mistake. So the Vista, and they kind of fixed it in 7, and then they just got rid of it in 8. They just stopped doing it. It was like same problem. You have like something on top of something. It's blurry. It looks terrible.
Arrow, right? The arrow.
Arrow, yeah.
Arrow effect?
So now,
that was it.
I mean, I remember Mac OS 10, 2001, with 25 years later, roughly, they come up with liquid glass and make the same mistake. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I have we learned nothing from the past? I mean, like, geez, at least have institutional memory, you know?
Yeah,
it's crazy
strange.
to me.
It's strange.
Very strange.
But, well, anyway, we're coming towards the end here, and let's. Okay.
What else can we complain about?
Do we have 4 hours?
Yes.
I could endlessly complain. We didn't even get into consoles the way I would have loved to, because boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
But that's a whole separate thing. We can just do a gaming show and complain about all that. Whoever, I hate them all. Yeah. But
yeah.
Okay, so let's 2 things to end on. One is, what is something that's optimistic for you in tech? So we talked about all the bad stuff. Is there a company? Is there a product? Is there something going on where you say, okay, yeah, there's a lot of bad, but look at this. This is an example of something going right, going well.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of small things, right? And any one of these could go south at any time. Like one of the things that kind of blows my mind is Notion is this wonderful tool for note taking and organizing ideas and writing and whatever you want to do with it. It's crazy. It's extensible. Still not charging me for this. I use this thing extensively every day, mobile and desktop. I cannot believe they've never tried to charge me. If I want to use their AI stuff, they'll charge me for that. And that seems fair, but I don't care. That's a small one. You know, there are lots of companies like this now because of this reaction to big tech and enshittification. You know, Mozilla is kind of trying to make a comeback. You get like Proton is doing a lot of interesting things. A lot of the browser makers, third party, whether it's, you know, Brave, Vivaldi, Opera, Mozilla with Firefox, obviously, are going in slightly different directions, but trying to respect your privacy and all that stuff and letting you make choices. Vivaldi's like, look, we're not doing AI ever, you know. Other companies are like, we're trying to do it maybe in a more of a sane way, whatever. So I think the choices are better than ever before, the alternatives or whatever. I like that. This is going to sound crazy because we just spent, you know, a better part of 2 hours in many, not complaining about AI, but maybe just being critical of a lot of what's going on there. But there is a kind of a hopeful aspect to AI, which is not AI in general. It's just part of it, right? Which I think is exciting. You know, when I grew up, the first real computer I had was a Commodore 64, but I remember going to a Sears with my mother when I was a kid. It was probably VIC-20s at the time, but they were on a table. They had brochures and handouts and things, and I was like just taken by this. And I was like, what am I going to make with this? I couldn't wait to do this. Like as soon as I started, I was like, I have to do this, you know? And I felt bad recently in the last few years that we don't have this anymore. Like the things that are like this are maybe like a Raspberry Pi, which, you know, middle class kids growing up today are never going to even want to look at and don't think, you know, people don't think about programming or creating or whatever. And that makes me feel kind of weird, but I feel like AI has the ability to solve that problem or to fill that role, right? Meaning like we talk about graphic artists and maybe they're losing jobs because AI does their thing. But if you look at the other side of that, it's also giving people who don't have those skills the ability to make things that they wouldn't be able to make otherwise, whether they're images or videos or music or whatever it might be. And that's exciting to me. I mean, it's going to get better. It's gotten better just this year. It's kind of amazing in some ways. And there is something to that I think is very exciting. And I say that, spent the better part of, I don't want to think about years trying to write this program. And then you get stuck, and then AI just solved it for me, And I was like, you could be aggravated by that, which I can't help being, but also excited by it, because it's like, wow, this is, my wife, who's non-technical, smart, but doesn't care about any of this stuff, is going to be able to, and does use AI for whatever, for work, is going to be able to use AI to make things that a year ago and 10 years ago would have required a very technical person and a lot of money, and wouldn't have happened really. And I think that's cool. Like, I think that's really neat.
And I would also say, because along those lines, because you're right, it does sound like a lot of doom and gloom, but I also just did a couple shows back that was 4.5 hours long, and most of it was this guy who is using it and is thrilled with it to take the perfect dark engine and make a game out of it that he never would have been able to do otherwise. But he's had this dream of this game that was all pop action stars of the 80s in the perfect dark engine. And he said, I'm just going back and forth with this thing, and we're making it, and it's happening. And
you're conversing with it, right? That's the thing. The ability to describe, like, when I grew up, and everyone, even non-technical, you heard this, like, everyone knows that computers do exactly what you tell it to do, which is where bugs come from, because you didn't tell it exactly not to do that thing that was wrong, right? You have to be very specific. So when you're writing software code, you have to be very specific. And I think the magic of AI is that it turns that on its head. AI looks for intent in what you're saying. It adds details, because it's trying to understand what it is that you want. And it will do, like in my interest in software development, creating an app, I describe what I want, but it creates other features for the thing, because that type of app has those features, and it's trying to understand this is probably what I would want, and that can be good or bad, I guess, but it's interesting. It's really the opposite of it doing exactly what you said, because it will do more than you said, which, I think it's crazy.
And then the one other thing I'll say, or I'll ask you, is because the original reason I started doing these episodes was because I felt like there were a lot of podcasters and people who only talked about the stuff they did podcasts about and wanted to talk about anything else, which I feel bad, because we've talked about a lot of the stuff that you talk about, and try to move it around. What is something that you wish you could talk about more that you don't ever get to talk about on a podcast? Some interest or something that you just, a game even, whatever, anything like that you never get to talk about that you'd like to take 5 minutes to talk about? Since we're
I mean, it's weird, because I kind of don't have that, in the sense that my life is lived kind of transparently, publicly, and I don't have any dark secrets or anything, like I don't have, or light secrets or whatever. Like, my interest in whatever it might be, reading or movies or music or whatever, is pretty, it's kind of out there. So that's just me being me, I guess. I just do that. A lot of people maybe wouldn't communicate that stuff, but
actually, okay, there's a perfect example. What is a really good book and a really good movie that you've read or seen recently? Just a couple of things that you recommend.
Right.
It doesn't even have to be that recent, but it could be from the 30s or whatever, because I watch a lot of stuff.
I mean,
like black and white.
So we saw Project Hail Mary in the theaters. My wife and I go to a movie in a theater maybe once a year, and I had read, I love the Andy Weir books. I had read The Martian, like I said, in the audiobook version. I'd read this one too. The Martian movie is very good. And Project Hail Mary is very good. As far as the stories go, I mean, they kind of hit her, but they're both one or the other, but they're both fantastic. But it's a hopeful message for humanity in some ways. And it's also something we need to hear today, because science matters, facts matter. People who know what they're talking about need to be listened to, not just billionaires who happen to be rich, but people who actually have expertise. I think this is important. Like, we're kind of losing this, and I will never understand that. So that kind of thing I like. I mean, books. I mean, I read a lot of industry books, and I read it's weird. I don't read as much fiction. I read everything Stephen King has ever written. I've been rereading 11/22/63, I believe is the exact title of the JFK one.
I haven't read that one.
It's fantastic.
But I love Stephen King too. I mean, I grew up with that stuff. So it's
there's a great TV series, miniseries that I've also watched little parts of it as I go through the book, which is pretty well, is well done. That's good too. But I mean,
well, that's, hey, if it's only that, I don't want to put you on the spot. So if it's
no, it's okay. I mean, I like to travel. I'm very interested in this. We have the Mexico thing. My wife and I spend a lot of time there. We have written a guidebook, because we're writers and this is how we see the world. So we, of course, go down that path, and that's very interesting.
Wait, is the guidebook out or you're writing it?
Yeah. It's yeah.
Oh, it is.
It's on.
Okay.
It's on LeadPub. Yeah, it's called Eternal Spring. It's different. It's different, but the same, right? I mean, think about it. Like, if you think about it, people probably don't think about this, but if you think about a guidebook, it's a lot like a book you'd write back in the day about Windows or something, like, which I still do. It's, things change. There's like this set of facts or information that can be useful or not, or experiences you have that might be relatable, but restaurants or businesses open and close and things change, and you have to keep up on it. And it's the same in that way. I guess I like being on a treadmill all the time. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I read so much. I read from the second I get up. I read during the day. I read before I go to bed every night. When I was a child, I used to read like the side of the cereal box and move on to the next cereal box. And then I discovered there were comics and newspapers. And then pretty soon,
my mother used to hate that I read while I was eating. She was like, "Pay attention to people." I'm like, "I'm reading something. I'm reading the back of the ketchup jar or whatever." It's just
I write same. I would read anything, no matter what it was. And I don't know. Every once in a while, you see something like I always think of. We were talking about AI in video games. So the AI in movies, same problem, right? Like, which is just what special effects. I mean, we've had like digital effects forever. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I read the Lord of the Rings every year for at least 12 years straight. I always wanted to see a movie or movies or whatever. Today would be better, I think, as a series. But I knew it was impossible. Like, we can never. This is the scope of it is too much. And then Jurassic Park happened, which was a book I read and handed to my friend as soon as you have to read this. They'll never be able to turn this into a movie. This is awesome. And then 2 years later, it was a movie, and it was awesome.
That is. And
yes. But when you see the movie, even today, it still kind of holds up, or does hold up. You're like, oh my God, they could make anything now, And it took a while they did finally do a Lord of the Rings, set of movies. But you realize at some point that anything you can imagine can be realized in film or whatever. And that's exciting to me. I mean, I see a lot of garbage,
Well, that's ironically,
but
Jurassic Park is when I see a movie with bad CG and I'm sitting here going, Jurassic Park did this in the 90s.
35 years ago, they figured this out. Exactly. Like, how are you not getting this right?
It's behind me because I want to watch it. I haven't watched it on 4K yet. And I'm like, that's a movie that's going to reward a nice TV, man.
I think the thing with AI, and it's really, I mean, it's terrible, in some ways, but then there's this democratization of things, and skills, whatever it might be. It's like the same way that someone who is a budding filmmaker today, you think, oh my God, everything's big budget movies. I'm never going to get in. It's $1 billion you have to spend, but you could film a movie on an iPhone, right? Or you might have a set of iPhones. They've done Hollywood movies where they film them on dozens of iPhones or whatever. I think it was a soccer game, right, that was filmed on iPhones, for example, or whatever. I don't know why I keep saying iPhone, but you don't have to buy a big rig and spend a lot of money and, do whatever you would have to do 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that's exciting, it really, I guess we kind of said this up front, it's the pro and con thing. Everything we talk about is like, there's a dark side, but there's also a light side. And hopefully the good outweighs the bad. And, this was still in the process with AI. We'll see, but I've always liked the idea. Microsoft used to be good at this. They would hand down technology to normal people that previously was confined to like these white lab coat wearing scientists who would overlord over everyone. And it's like, no, everyone's going to get this. We're a million years from that, but that's what they used to be good at. And I always liked that, as terrible as Microsoft was and is. I mean, they would do these things where you're like, okay, they're giving fire to man, I guess all these companies do that. So, Google search is a miracle in some way. It's also the biggest search or a center of enshittification in the world, right? I mean, it's like, everything is like this. It's so weird, but there's good out there with the bad, I guess.
Well, that's actually a good way to wind things up, is to say, hey, there's pros and cons to everything. And the reality is, and this is something we sort of touched on without specifically saying it, but we exist at the point where there's probably a good alternative for almost anything that you have gotten really sick of. So yeah, like Adobe, there are good alternatives to Adobe. There's OpenOffice and LibreOffice if you just are sick of subscriptions or whatever. There's a lot of good stuff out there. And I would say, this is the one part I don't hear enough people say when they point out is, support the people who make that stuff if you can. Donate something to somebody who makes a little tool, because that will keep them making the tool. A lot of this stuff is held up by goodwill, and that's great, but you can't bring it into a store and get groceries with it. So if you use some tool or some open alternative and there is a donation option or whatever, and that can go for podcasting, that can go for applications, music. Oh, that's why I love Bandcamp so much. It's just such a way to cut out the big stuff. Right. Put some money towards it. That's what will keep it coming around. If there's somebody making
actually
something,
super important. Yeah, I'm going to be writing soon about things like books. You can go through Kindle, and there are ways to save money there. You don't have to have subscriptions, but then there are these things you can do through your library where you can get books for free and just read them, because you're only going to read them once in most cases. And there's things like this for different types of media, and you don't have to. There's a lot of good
DRM-free bookstores now where you get the EPUB file or whatever, and you don't have to do it through. Because I basically have air-gapped my Kindle at this point, and I'm like, nope, I just want to pay the authors. I'll figure it out. I'll like bookshop.
You want to support the people you like or that make the things you like. And I really do feel like, as terrible as our world can be in so many ways, the big tech and everything, the alternatives are so much better than they've ever been. There are more of them, and if you just want to get out of this to some degree in any direction, it's there, and that I
you largely can. That's another thing. People feel like they have no agency in anything. You do. There is the ability, which is a lot different in computing specifically, but in many things, there are ways now, because of the internet, really in a larger sense, you can support people directly. You can collaborate people with people directly. Don't get, and it's weird for me to say this, don't get swallowed under by this torrent of doom, because it's easy to think that way. But the reality is, it's not. I mean, you can't
be vigilant, be educated about it. That is there, but it's not all that's there. And it's hard sometimes to keep that in perspective, but it is true.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to remind everybody that they can find you over on Twit for the podcast you do there, Thurrott.com. Thurrott.com is probably the best place to just go find out about everything.
That's kind of the center, I guess.
That's the mother brain, to use a video game analogy, of everything.
Yep.
Well, thanks for doing this, Paul. This is a blast, man. I really appreciate it. I really do.
No, anytime. I'm happy to do it. Nice to finally kind of meet you formally, I guess. I mean, we never...
And not have me turn out to be a lunatic.
Yeah.
This is one thing I say.
Well,
and I mean it when I say it. People, because you said you hadn't watched anything, it's like, you don't know if you're going to come onto a screen. Somebody's going to be like, so let's talk about eugenics and why not enough people are embracing it.
You're like, okay, we're going down this...
You know what? My dog just pooped on the floor. I got to run. And you just have to book out of there. So...
Oh, is that the power going out?
Darn, he's hit the end button. But I do. I sit there and I'm like, man, people are way more brave than I would give them credit for when some lunatic just says, hey, you want to come on my show, and not know anything about it. So, but yeah, Thurrott.com, twit.tv. And again, thanks so much. This was an absolute blast.
Of course.
And,
no, thank you.
I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time. Well, that's true, but I also had a lot of fun over this time. Boy, English. Someday I'll learn it. Anyway, everybody, go to Thurrott.com to find out about Paul's stuff. You can go over to our show homepage, ozonshow.com, for back catalog stuff of ours. And since I have no idea how to ever end any of these episodes, I'm just going to shut up and say thank you again, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. And we'll talk to you again next time.